The complete history of ancient Greece contains more plot twists, betrayals, and world-changing moments than any Hollywood blockbuster. And it's all true. From the mysterious collapse of entire civilizations, to the philosopher who drank poison for his beliefs, from the 300 Spartans who defied an empire, to the young king who conquered the known world by age 30, this is the full, uninterrupted story that most people only know in fragments. Tonight, let the entire epic unfold as you sleep. Every rise, every fall, every moment that echoes in our world today. Though before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We're on to building a global community here. So, without further ado, let's begin, shall we? Dawn in the Aegean. The origins of a civilization. Before Greece was Greece, the Aegean Sea cradled 3 Bronze Age cultures that would plant the seeds of everything to come. Picture the year 2000 BC. The Mediterranean world belongs to Egypt and Mesopotamia. They have cities, writing, empires, but scattered across the islands and coastlines of the Aegean, something different is stirring. 3 distinct peoples are building, trading, burying their dead with gold masks and ceremonial daggers. The Cycladic Islanders come first, around 3200 BC. They carve marble figurines with folded arms and tilted heads, hauntingly abstract, almost modern. These small figures travel across the sea lanes, appearing in distant graves and sanctuaries. The Cyclades lack good farmland, so they become middlemen. Obsidian from Melos, copper from Cyprus. They don't build palaces or write down their language, but their boats connect the scattered islands into a web of exchange. Then comes Crete, the Minoans. Around 2000 BC, palaces begin rising at Knossos, Phaistos, Malea. Not fortresses. These are labyrinthine administrative centers sprawling across acres, filled with storage magazines for wine and oil and grain. The walls bloom with frescoes showing bull leapers, bare-breasted priestesses, dolphins arcing through blue waves. Arthur Evans excavated Knossos starting in 1900 and found something that stunned him, a civilization that seemed more joyful than the harsh warrior cultures he expected. He called them Minoans, after the legendary king Minos. The Minoans develop writing. First comes Cretan hieroglyphic, pictographic, and mysterious. Then Linear A appears around 1800 BC, inscribed on clay tablets. We still cannot read Linear A. The language beneath it remains locked. But the tablets tell us this much. The palaces were command economies. Scribes tracked every jar of oil, every flock of sheep. Central authority controlled production and distribution across the island. Minoan ships dominate the Aegean. Their traders reach Egypt, where tomb paintings at Thebes show men in Minoan dress bringing gifts to pharaohs. They establish outposts throughout the islands. Thera becomes a prosperous colony, its town of Akrotiri filled with sophisticated frescoes. One shows fishermen holding their catch, another depicts ships and festivals. This is a culture confident in its prosperity. But on the mainland, a different power is rising. The Mycenaeans emerge around 1600 BC in the Peloponnese. These are warrior chieftains who build their citadels on defensible hills. Mycenae itself crowns a rocky height, its massive walls later called Cyclopean by Greeks who couldn't believe humans moved such stones. The Lion Gate stands as the entrance, carved with 2 lions flanking a column. This is a statement of power. In 1876, Heinrich Schliemann excavated the shaft graves at Mycenae. He found gold, death masks pressed to noble faces, bronze weapons inlaid with scenes of hunting and warfare, amber from the Baltic, ostrich eggs from Africa. The Mycenaean elite were wealthy and connected to trade routes stretching across the known world. The Mycenaeans borrow heavily from Crete. Their art shows Minoan influence. Their architecture adapts Minoan elements. But they add something distinctly their own: fortification. Tiryns, Pylos, Athens. Each major center gets defended walls. These are not peaceful merchants. These are warlords. Around 1450 BC, something dramatic happens. The Minoan palaces on Crete are destroyed. Most burn. Only Knossos survives, and now it's controlled by Mycenaean Greeks. We know because the Linear B script appears. Michael Ventris deciphered it in 1952, proving it's an early form of Greek. Suddenly, we can read palace records. They list chariot wheels, bronze weapons, offerings to gods with Greek names: Poseidon, Zeus, Athena, Dionysus. The Mycenaean takeover of Crete marks a shift. The Aegean is no longer dominated by island palaces. Power consolidates on the mainland. The Mycenaean palaces function like Minoan ones, bureaucratic centers controlling agricultural surplus. But they're more militarized. Linear B tablets from Pylos, preserved when the palace burned around 1200 BC, show scribes frantically organizing coastal defenses. Rowers needed for ships, bronze distributed for weapons. Something is coming. The Mycenaeans develop a distinctive style of pottery that spreads everywhere. Their stirrup jars appear in Egypt, the Levant, Anatolia, Italy. They're trading partners and competitors with the Hittite Empire in Anatolia. A Hittite text mentions Ehiyawa, likely referring to the Mycenaean Greeks, as equals who sometimes cause diplomatic headaches. This is the world of the Trojan War, assuming any historical truth underlies Homer's epic. The city of Troy, located at Hisarlik in modern Turkey, was a real Bronze Age settlement. Its layer Sisyphus shows destruction around 1180 BC. Whether Agamemnon and Achilles fought there, we'll never know. But Mycenaean Greeks certainly had the ships, the organization, and the motivation to launch overseas campaigns. The palace culture reaches its height around 1300 BC. Then things start unraveling. Between 1250 and 1200 BC, nearly every major Mycenaean palace is destroyed. Pylos burns so hot that clay tablets bake hard, preserving the last desperate administrative actions. Mycenae, Tiryns, and Thebes suffer destruction. Only Athens seems to survive, though diminished. Linear B disappears. Writing vanishes from Greece for 4 centuries. The archaeological record shows population collapse. Settlement patterns shift away from palaces to small, dispersed villages. The elaborate trade networks dissolve. The production of fine pottery declines. Bronze becomes scarce. This isn't just Greek collapse. Around 1200 BC, the entire eastern Mediterranean descends into chaos. The Hittite Empire falls. Egyptian texts describe attacks by mysterious sea peoples. Cities from Anatolia to the Levant burn. Ugarit, a prosperous trading city in Syria, is destroyed and never rebuilt. A letter found in its ruins shows the king desperately requesting military aid just before the end. What caused this catastrophic Bronze Age collapse? Theories multiply. Earthquake storms rattling palace after palace across seismic fault lines. Climate change causing drought and crop failure. Invasions by Dorian Greeks from the north, though archaeological evidence for this is slim. Systemic breakdown of interdependent trade networks creating cascading failures. Perhaps all of the above, a perfect storm of disasters. The Mycenaean world had become too complex, too dependent on palace redistribution and long-distance trade. When multiple stresses hit simultaneously, it shattered. Greece plunges into a dark age. Population drops dramatically. Material culture becomes simpler. The grand architectural traditions are forgotten. People forget how to write. They forget how to make elaborate frescoes and gold death masks. They forget the organizational capacity needed to move cyclopean stones. But they don't forget everything. Oral traditions persist. Stories about Mycenaean Troy, about heroes and gods, pass from generation to generation. These memories will eventually crystallize into epic poetry. The Dark Age isn't empty. It's a crucible where the cultural DNA of classical Greece begins forming. The palaces are gone. The warrior kings are dust. But their legacy echoes forward into something entirely new. The Geometric Age, emergence from the shadows. Greece is silent for 400 years. The palaces lie in ruins, already ancient mysteries to the scattered villagers farming among the stones. No one writes, no one builds temples or fortifications. Population has crashed, trade has withered. This is the Greek Dark Age, stretching from 1100 to 800 BC. But darkness doesn't mean emptiness. Something is stirring. Around 1050 BC, a new pottery style emerges. Simple at first, circles and semicircles painted on clay. Then it becomes more complex, more confident. Geometric patterns cover entire vessels in intricate bands, triangles, zigzags, meanders. By 900 BC, potters in Athens are creating elaborate scenes, funeral processions, warships, warriors, all rendered in stick figure silhouettes surrounded by tight geometric designs. These pots tell us people are gathering again. They're conducting communal rituals, burying their dead with ceremony. Social organization is rebuilding from the ground up. The Greek world is reorganizing around something new. The protopolis. Not yet the city-states of classical times, but the early stirrings. Small communities clustering around defensible hills. Shared sanctuaries where neighboring villages gather for festivals and sacrifices. These aren't palaces controlling everything from the center. These are bottom-up organizations, networks of kinship groups and villages slowly forming larger identities. Athens survives the Dark Age better than most. The Acropolis remains continuously occupied. Tradition claims Athens was never conquered, that Athenians are autochthonous, sprung from the soil itself. Whether true or not, Athens becomes an important center during the geometric period. Its pottery workshops produce the finest vessels which spread across the Greek world. Around 900 BC, Greeks begin venturing outward again. Ships reconnect island to island. The Euboean cities of Chalcis and Eretria become maritime powers, their traders reaching the Levant. At Almina in Syria, Greeks establish a trading post around 825 BC. They're encountering Phoenician merchants, the dominant seafaring traders of the eastern Mediterranean. This contact changes everything. The Phoenicians possess something the Greeks lost: writing. The Phoenician alphabet is brilliantly efficient: 22 consonants, no complex syllabaries like Linear B. Around 800 BC, Greeks adapt it to their language. They make crucial additions, creating the first true alphabet by adding vowels: alpha, beta, gamma. The letters preserve their Phoenician names, now meaningless in Greek. Aleph becomes alpha, Beth becomes beta. Writing returns to Greece after 4 centuries of silence, but it returns transformed. This isn't palace bureaucracy tracking sheep and grain. This new writing will record poetry, laws, dedications to gods. It's democratic in a way Linear B never was, capable of spreading beyond scribal guilds. The earliest Greek alphabetic inscriptions appear around 750 BC, on pottery mostly. Short notes, names. A cup from Ischia off the coast of Italy bears one of the earliest. Nestor's cup was good to drink from, but whoever drinks from this cup, desire for beautiful crowned Aphrodite will seize him. Someone with literary pretensions making a joke comparing their cup to Nestor's in epic poetry. Epic poetry. This is the other revolutionary development of the geometric age. Somewhere in this period, the oral traditions preserving Mycenaean memories crystallize into the monumental epics we call the Iliad and Odyssey. We attribute them to Homer, though we know almost nothing about him. Was he one poet or many? Did he compose in the 8th century or earlier? These questions have no certain answers. What we know is this: by 700 BC, Greeks share epic poems of extraordinary sophistication. Nearly 16,000 lines of dactylic hexameter preserving stories about the Trojan War and its aftermath. These weren't written compositions, but oral performances refined over generations by professional singers called Aoidos. The epics contain archaeological memories: boar's tusk helmets, tower shields, bronze weapons, all Mycenaean, but they also reflect the poet's contemporary world: iron weapons, cremation burials, political assemblies. The Iliad and Odyssey are layered texts, centuries of cultural memory compressed into narrative. They do something more important than preserve history. They create identity. Greeks scattered across islands and coastlines, speaking different dialects, worshiping local variations of gods, now share common stories. They all know Achilles' rage, they know Odysseus' cunning, they know Hector's tragedy and Helen's beauty. The epics establish a shared pantheon: Zeus ruling from Olympus, Athena favoring clever heroes, Poseidon shaking the earth. They establish shared values: heroic excellence, honor, guest friendship, proper burial for the fallen. Hesiod, composing around 700 BC in Boeotia, adds another layer. His theogony organizes the divine world into a coherent system. The universe emerges from chaos. Gaia births Uranus. The Titans war with the Olympians. Zeus establishes cosmic order. Hesiod gives Greeks a shared creation story, explaining how their gods came to power and why the world works as it does. His Works and Days offers something different: a farmer's almanac mixed with moral instruction: when to plow, when to sail, how to conduct yourself justly. This is practical wisdom for small farmers in a world recovering from collapse. It's also deeply pessimistic. Hesiod describes humanity declining through ages: gold, silver, bronze, heroes, iron. His own Iron Age is characterized by toil, injustice, and moral decay. But Greeks are rebuilding. The population is growing again. Communities are consolidating into larger political units. The protopolis is becoming the polis. Sanctuaries emerge as focal points. Olympia in the Peloponnese becomes a pan-Hellenic gathering place. Starting around 776 BC, according to later tradition, Greeks meet there every 4 years for athletic competitions honoring Zeus. The Olympic Games become a shared calendar, a way to date events, in the third year of the 21st Olympiad. Delphi rises to prominence as the seat of Apollo's oracle. The Pythia, Apollo's priestess, delivers prophecies that guide colonization, warfare, and political decisions. Kings and cities send ambassadors bearing questions and expensive gifts. Delphi becomes immensely wealthy and politically influential. The geometric age is ending. The archaic period is beginning. Greece is no longer scattered villages guarding memories of a lost past. It's becoming a network of dynamic city-states, each jealously independent but sharing language, religion, and culture. The poet's words have taken root. The alphabet has returned. The polis is forming. Greece is waking up. Homer and Hesiod, the forging of a Greek identity. Two voices echo across the archaic Greek world, shaping everything that follows. We don't know who Homer was. Ancient Greeks debated his origins. 7 cities claimed him. Was he from Ionia, across the Aegean in Asia Minor? Was he blind, as tradition insists? Did he even exist as a single historical person? Or is Homer a shorthand for generations of oral poets? These questions dissolve before the Iliad and Odyssey themselves. 27,000 lines of poetry that define what it means to be Greek. The Iliad opens in anger. Sing, goddess, the rage of Achilles. We're plunged into the 10th year of the Trojan War. The greatest Greek warrior, Achilles, withdraws from battle after Agamemnon, the supreme commander, dishonors him by seizing his war prize. Without Achilles, the Greeks suffer devastating losses. His closest companion, Patroclus, takes Achilles' armor and enters battle, only to fall to Hector, Troy's greatest defender. Achilles returns to the fight, consumed by grief and fury. He destroys Hector in single combat, then defiles the corpse by dragging it behind his chariot. But the epic ends not with triumph, but with reconciliation. Hector's father, old King Priam, comes to Achilles' tent to beg for his son's body. Two enemies, both destroyed by war, share a moment of profound human connection. The Iliad isn't about victory. It's about mortality, honor, and the cost of rage. The Odyssey explores different territory. Odysseus, cleverest of the Greeks, spends 10 years trying to reach home after Troy's fall. He encounters monsters and gods, descends to the underworld, loses all his companions. Meanwhile, suitors occupy his palace, consuming his wealth and pressuring his wife, Penelope, to remarry. When Odysseus finally returns, disguised as a beggar, he methodically reclaims his kingdom through cunning and violence. Where the Iliad examines warfare's brutal nobility, the Odyssey celebrates intelligence, perseverance, and the civilized values of home and family. These poems do extraordinary cultural work. They establish the Greek pantheon in shared imagination. Zeus rules from Olympus, wielding thunderbolts and maintaining cosmic order. Athena, goddess of wisdom, favors clever heroes. Poseidon shakes the earth and drowns sailors who offend him. Apollo brings plague and prophecy. Aphrodite inspires destructive desire. The gods are powerful but not omnipotent. They argue, scheme, take sides in human conflicts. They're bound by fate, just as mortals are. This theological system allows Greeks everywhere to recognize each other's worship. The Zeus honored in Athens may have different epithets than Zeus in Sparta, but he's recognizably the same god. The epics create religious common ground. They also establish heroic values. Arete, excellence. Kleos, glory won through great deeds. Time, honor given by peers. The hero seeks recognition through action, knowing he'll die but hoping his name lives on in song. Achilles faces this choice explicitly, a long, obscure life versus a short, glorious one. He chooses glory. The epics teach Greeks how to speak, how to argue, how to persuade. The Iliad is filled with speeches, leaders debating strategy, warriors exchanging taunts, ambassadors negotiating. These verbal contests matter as much as physical ones. Rhetoric becomes essential to Greek culture, and Homer provides the foundational models. The poems spread through performance. Professional singers, oidos, memorize vast portions. They perform at festivals, aristocratic feasts, religious gatherings. The hexameter rhythm aids memory, and traditional formulas allow improvisation within a stable framework. Rosy-fingered dawn appears again and again. Wine-dark sea. Swift-footed Achilles. These repeated phrases give structure while allowing variation. By 600 BC, the epics are being written down, probably first on the island of Samos or in Athens. The alphabet, adapted from Phoenician script around 800 BC, makes this possible. Writing fixes the poems in canonical form, though regional variations persist. Hesiod offers a different voice. Where Homer sings of heroes and gods in legendary time, Hesiod speaks as a working farmer in Boeotia, probably around 700 BC. His theogony organizes divine genealogy. In the beginning was chaos, a yawning void. From chaos came Gaia, earth, Tartarus, the underworld, and Eros, primordial desire. Gaia births Uranus, sky, who becomes her husband. Their children are the Titans, but Uranus hates his offspring and pushes them back into Gaia's womb. The youngest Titan, Cronus, castrates his father with a sickle, freeing his siblings. Cronus rules the Titans, but fears his own children will overthrow him. He swallows each infant born to his wife Rhea. She hides the youngest Zeus, giving Cronus a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes. Zeus grows up, forces Cronus to regurgitate his siblings, and leads them in war against the Titans. The Titanomachy lasts 10 years. Zeus frees the Cyclopes from Tartarus, and they forge his thunderbolt. He frees the hundred-handed giants who hurl mountains at the Titans. Zeus triumphs, casting the Titans into Tartarus. He establishes the Olympian order, Zeus ruling sky, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. Hesiod's cosmogony explains the world's structure and legitimizes Zeus's power. It's a sovereignty myth, showing how current order emerged from primordial chaos through successive generations of divine conflict. Works and Days operates differently. Hesiod addresses his brother Perses, who allegedly cheated him in dividing their inheritance. The poem mixes practical farming advice with moral instruction. When to plow, 40 days after the winter solstice. When to harvest, when the Pleiades rise. How to build a plow, how much seed to sow. But it's also about justice. Hesiod warns Perses not to trust corrupt judges. He presents two strifes. Bad strife promotes war and conflict, but good strife inspires healthy competition and work. He describes humanity's decline through 5 ages. The Golden Age, when people lived like gods, the Silver Age of lesser men, the Bronze Age of warriors, the Age of heroes who fought at Troy, and finally the Iron Age, Hesiod's own time, characterized by toil, injustice, and moral decay. His pessimism reflects the hard life of small farmers in post-Dark Age Greece, but it also establishes certain values: honest work, justice, respect for the gods. Hesiod speaks for ordinary Greeks, not aristocratic heroes. Together, Homer and Hesiod create Greek cultural identity. The epics provide shared stories, values, theology, and language. They circulate through performance and eventually through written texts. Every educated Greek knows them. They're quoted in political speeches, referenced in drama, taught to children. The aristocracy models itself on Homeric heroes. Philosophers debate the ethics of Achilles' rage. When Greeks colonize new territories from Spain to the Black Sea, they carry these stories. When they encounter non-Greeks, they define themselves partly through their relationship to this shared literary heritage. To be Greek is to know Homer, to worship the Olympian gods, to value heroic excellence and clever speech. The poems become more than literature. They become identity itself. Colonization and contact. Greeks across the seas. In the mid-8th century BC, Greeks begin moving. Not conquering armies, not palace-directed expeditions. Small groups of families, sometimes just a few dozen people, boarding ships and sailing toward uncertain futures. They're leaving home to establish new settlements across the Mediterranean and Black Sea. This isn't exile, it's opportunity. Greece's population is recovering from the Dark Age collapse. Valleys that once supported palace economies now struggle to feed growing communities. Arable land is precious and limited. The rocky soil of Attica or Boeotia only produces so much grain. When your father's small farm must be divided among multiple sons, someone has to leave. Trade networks are expanding. Phoenician merchants from Tyre and Sidon dominate Mediterranean commerce, establishing Carthage in North Africa around 814 BC. Greeks trading with them learn about distant shores, Sicily's rich wheat fields, the metal deposits of Spain, the fish-filled waters of the Black Sea. These reports spark imagination and ambition. Greek city-states begin organizing expeditions. A mother city, the metropolis, appoints an oikist, a founder, to lead colonists to a chosen location. Delphi's oracle provides religious sanction. The colonists carry fire from their home city's hearth, symbolically extending its sacred presence. They sail with enough supplies to establish themselves: seed grain, farming tools, weapons. Chalcis and Eretria on Euboea become early colonial powers. Around 750 BC, Euboeans established Pithecusae on the island of Ischia off Italy's coast, then Cumae on the mainland. These aren't just trading posts, they're permanent settlements with farms, workshops, temples. The colonists maintain ties with their mother cities but govern themselves independently. Southern Italy becomes so densely settled with Greek colonies that Romans later call it Magna Graecia, Greater Greece. Sybaris, founded around 720 BC, grows fabulously wealthy from its position between the Ionian and Tyrrhenian seas. Croton becomes famous for athletes and the philosopher Pythagoras. Tarentum, settled by Spartans around 706 BC, dominates the heel of Italy. These cities often surpass their mother cities in wealth and power. Sicily attracts even more colonists. Syracuse, established by Corinthians around 733 BC, claims the finest harbor on the island's eastern coast. It expands aggressively, establishing its own subcolonies. By 600 BC, Syracuse rivals any city in mainland Greece. Gela, Acragas, Himera. The island's coastline fills with Greek cities, though the interior remains controlled by indigenous Sicels. Corinth becomes the most successful colonizing city. Its position on the isthmus connecting central Greece to the Peloponnese makes it a commercial hub. Corinthian pottery, decorated with animals and floral patterns, dominates Mediterranean markets in the 7th century. Corinth establishes Corcyra, Corfu, around 733 BC, giving it a crucial way station toward Italy. It founds Potidaea in northern Greece. Its colonies become wealthy enough to challenge their mother city politically and militarily. Megara, Corinth's smaller neighbor, punches above its weight. It establishes Megara Hyblaea in Sicily, Byzantium on the Bosporus around 6667 BC, and Chalcedon across the strait. Controlling Byzantium means controlling access to the Black Sea's resources. The Black Sea becomes a Greek lake. Miletus, the wealthiest city in Ionia, sends out more colonies than any other metropolis. Sinope, Trapezus, Olbia. Greek settlements ring the Black Sea's shores. They trade Greek wine, oil, and manufactured goods for grain, timber, and enslaved people from Scythian territories. This trade becomes vital to mainland Greece, especially Athens, which can't feed its growing population from local resources alone. Greeks push westward too. Massalia, modern Marseille, is founded by Phocian Greeks around 600 BC. It becomes the gateway for Greek influence into Gaul. Emporion in Spain gives Greeks access to Iberian silver and tin. Cyrene in North Africa, established around 630 BC, prospers from exporting silphium, a valuable medicinal plant. These colonies are fully independent city-states, not imperial outposts. They maintain emotional and religious ties to their mother cities, sending delegations to home festivals and consulting Delphi's oracle. But politically, they stand alone. Sometimes they fight wars against their metropolis. The colonization movement transforms Greek culture. It spreads Greek language and religion across vast territories. It creates a diaspora with shared identity but diverse experiences. A colonist's grandson in Syracuse thinks of himself as Greek, worships Greek gods, speaks a Greek dialect, but his world differs dramatically from his cousins in Athens. Contact with other cultures intensifies. In the Levant and Egypt, Greeks encounter ancient civilizations far older than their own. They adopt the Phoenician alphabet, transforming it by adding vowels. They study Egyptian art, adopting its stylized poses for their early sculpture. The Kouros statues of archaic Greece, showing striding young men with stylized hair and rigid posture, descend directly from Egyptian models. In Italy and Sicily, Greeks encounter indigenous peoples, Etruscans, Latins, Sicels. Sometimes they trade peacefully. Sometimes they fight. Often they intermarry, creating hybrid communities. Greek pottery and practices influence local cultures, while Greeks adopt foreign deities and customs. Demeter's cult, possibly influenced by Sicilian agricultural traditions, becomes prominent in Greek colonies. The Etruscans of central Italy especially intrigue Greeks. They're wealthy, sophisticated, with their own writing and religious practices. Greeks trade with them extensively, competing and sometimes cooperating. Later, when Rome rises to power, its culture carries heavy Etruscan influence, which itself contains Greek elements. The cultural transmission is complex, multi-directional. In Egypt, Greeks establish a trading settlement at Naucratis in the Nile Delta around 630 BC with Pharaoh Psamtik-Phir's permission. Greek merchants grow wealthy, handling trade between Egypt and the Aegean. Greek mercenaries serve in Egyptian armies. The exposure to Egyptian art, architecture, and religion profoundly influences archaic Greek culture. This era of colonization and contact pulls Greece out of isolation. The scattered communities of the geometric age become a Mediterranean civilization. Greek cities from Spain to the Black Sea share religious festivals, trade networks, and cultural practices. They recognize each other as fellow Hellenes, distinct from barbarians, non-Greek speakers. But unity doesn't mean political cooperation. Each polis jealously guards its independence. Colonies compete with mother cities. Syracuse wars with Corinth. Athens struggles with Megara over border territory. The Greek world is fractious, competitive, sometimes violent, yet shared culture binds them. Olympia's games, expanded in the 7th century to include various athletic contests, attract competitors from across the Greek world. Delphi's oracle guides colonial expeditions, its authority recognized from Sicily to the Black Sea. Greek religious festivals become pan-Hellenic, drawing worshippers from distant cities. The poet Archilochus, writing around 650 BC, exemplifies this era's attitudes. Born on Paros, he joined a colonial expedition to Thasos. His poetry is personal, bitter, often mocking heroic ideals. He admits throwing away his shield in battle. Some Thracian struts with my shield. I abandoned it beside a bush, a blameless piece of equipment, unwillingly. But I saved myself. What do I care about that shield? To hell with it. I'll get another one just as good. This isn't Homer's world. The colonization era produces new voices, new values. Greeks are adapting to diverse environments, encountering foreign peoples, building wealth through trade. The heroic past still matters, but practical concerns increasingly dominate. The Greek world is expanding, from small, scattered communities to a Mediterranean network. The seeds are planted for classical civilizations flowering. The Spartan experiment, discipline and destiny. Sparta chooses a different path. While other Greek cities embrace trade, colonization, and cultural innovation, Sparta turns inward. It constructs a society organized around a single purpose: military excellence. Nothing else matters. Art, commerce, philosophy, comfort, all secondary. This doesn't happen overnight. Sparta begins like other Greek polis. Around 900 BC, Dorian Greeks settled the Eurotas Valley in Laconia, conquering or absorbing the indigenous population. They farm the land, develop pottery workshops, participate in wider Greek culture. Sparta is prosperous but unremarkable. Then comes the crisis. Sparta needs more land. Around 740 BC, it invades neighboring Messenia, the fertile region west across the Tagus Mountains. The First Mycenaean War drags on for nearly 20 years. Sparta wins, but barely. The conquest strains their society. How do you control a conquered population nearly equal in size to your own? Sparta's solution is radical. The Messenians become helots, agricultural serfs bound to the land. They farm Spartan estates, handing over half their produce to Spartan masters. The helots outnumber their Spartan overlords perhaps 7-1. This creates permanent tension. The helots hate their subjugation. Spartans fear revolt. Around 670 BC, that fear materializes. The Second Mycenaean War erupts when helots rebel. For 17 years, Sparta fights for survival against its own enslaved population. The war nearly destroys them. They prevail again, brutally suppressing resistance. These wars transform Sparta. A consensus emerges. To control the helots, every Spartan male must become a professional warrior. Normal Greek life, where citizens farm their own land or pursue trade, becomes impossible. Instead, Spartans develop a system unprecedented in Greek history. Tradition attributes these reforms to Lycurgus, a legendary lawgiver. Modern scholars doubt he existed as a historical figure, but someone or some group around 650 BC reorganizes Spartan society according to principles of radical equality and military discipline. The system starts at birth. Elders inspect infants. If deemed weak or deformed, the child is exposed, left to die. This claim appears in ancient sources, though recent archaeology questions its prevalence. Regardless, Sparta's reputation for eliminating the unfit becomes legendary. At age 7, boys leave their families for the agoge, the state education system. They live in barracks, organized into age groups. They learn reading and music, but education focuses on physical training and endurance. They're deliberately underfed, encouraged to steal food to supplement rations. Getting caught brings punishment. Not for stealing, but for incompetence. The training grows harsher. Boys fight each other. They sleep outdoors in winter. They undergo ritual whippings at Artemis Orthia's altar, enduring pain without crying out. They learn obedience, discipline, contempt for comfort. At 20, they become full warriors but don't yet gain citizenship. They join a sicilian, a mess group of about 15 men who eat together daily. They live in barracks away from family. They train constantly. At 30, they finally achieve full citizenship and can marry, though they still take meals with their sicilian. This system creates equality among citizens. Spartans call themselves homoioi, the equals. They're forbidden luxury, ostentation, individual distinction. They wear simple clothing. They use iron bars as currency, deliberately making wealth accumulation difficult. Land is distributed equally, though this equality erodes over time. Women occupy a unique position. They don't participate in military training, but receive physical education, unusual in Greece. They manage estates while men live in barracks. They're free to speak their minds, scandalizing other Greeks with their boldness. Spartan women become famous for their sharp tongues and fierce pride. A mother tells her son departing for battle, "Come back with your shield or on it." The political system balances multiple elements. Two kings from separate royal families lead in war but hold limited domestic power. A council of elders, the Gerousia, composed of men over 60, proposes legislation. An assembly of citizens votes on proposals, though they can't debate them. 5 annually elected ephors supervise the kings and enforce discipline. This mixed constitution earns admiration. Later philosophers like Plato and Aristotle study it, arguing about its merits. It seems stable, resistant to the tyrannies and factional violence plaguing other Greek cities. The Helots make everything possible. They farm the land, producing food that supports a warrior class doing nothing but train. But Helots remain dangerous. Spartans conduct annual crypteia, secret operations where young warriors hunt Helots at night, terrorizing the population and eliminating potential leaders. The state formally declares war on Helots each year, making their elimination legally permissible. This system has costs. Sparta's population of full citizens remains small, perhaps never exceeding 9,000 adult males. They can't expand too far without diluting their strength. They're paranoid about outside influence, forbidding foreign travel, and limiting interactions with non-Spartans. Sparta produces no philosophy, no drama, no monumental architecture. The city itself lacks walls. It has no great artists or poets after the Archaic period. Everything serves the military. A Spartan poet, Tyrtaeus, writing around 650 BC during the Second Mycenaean War, exemplifies the ethos. For it is a fine thing for a brave man to die, fallen in the front ranks while fighting for his homeland. Other Greeks react ambivalently. They admire Spartan discipline, courage, and their reputation for keeping their word. But they also see Sparta as backwards, repressive, culturally sterile. The Athenian playwright Euripides has a character say, "The Spartans are the only Greeks who need walls around their women, not their city." By 600 BC, Sparta dominates the Peloponnese. It organizes the Peloponnesian League, a network of allied cities that follow Sparta's lead in warfare. Member cities maintain independence but provide troops when Sparta calls. This gives Sparta a military reach without direct administration. Sparta doesn't colonize. It doesn't expand aggressively beyond controlling Messenia. It focuses inward, perfecting its military machine, controlling its Helot population, maintaining its unique way of life. The experiment works in its own terms. Sparta produces the finest hoplite warriors in Greece. Its phalanx becomes legendary. Other Greeks watch Spartan soldiers march in perfect order, singing paeans, advancing without breaking formation. They're disciplined, fearless, obedient unto death. But the system is brittle. It depends on constant vigilance against Helot revolt. It requires every citizen to conform absolutely. It sacrifices everything for military power. Sparta becomes Greece's ultimate military power, but it's a narrow, fearful society, forever fighting the consequences of its own choices. The Spartan experiment demonstrates what total commitment to a single purpose can achieve, and what it costs. The Athenian journey, from tyranny to early democracy. Athens in 650 BC is unremarkable, a small city-state controlling Attica, the peninsula northeast of the Peloponnese. It has good clay for pottery and silver mines at Laurium, otherwise nothing special. Corinth and Sparta far surpass it in wealth and power, but Athens possesses something else, location. Attica survived the Bronze Age collapse relatively intact. Athens claims autochthony, insisting Athenians always lived there, never conquered by Dorian invaders. Whether historically true or not, this claim creates strong civic identity. Unlike Sparta with its helots, Athens integrates its rural population as citizens. Farmers in distant demes, administrative districts, belong to the political community. This inclusiveness eventually proves crucial. Early Athens is dominated by aristocratic families, the Eupatridae, the well-born. They control the best land, monopolize political offices, judge legal disputes according to customary law they alone know. The archonship, Athens' chief magistracy, rotates among aristocratic clans. After serving, archons join the Areopagus Council, a body of former magistrates wielding enormous power. Ordinary farmers fall into debt. Without coinage yet developed, they borrow against their land and labor. When they can't repay, they become hectomoroi, sixth parters, obligated to give 1/6 of their produce to creditors. Some lose freedom entirely, becoming enslaved. By 600 BC, social tension threatens to tear Athens apart. The poor want relief. Aristocrats fear losing privileges. Civil war looms. Into this crisis steps Solon. An aristocrat, but also a traitor, he understands different social perspectives. Around 594 BC, both factions accept him as mediator. He's appointed archon with extraordinary powers to reform Athens' laws and social structure. Solon's first act is the seisachtheia, shaking off of burdens. He cancels debts. He frees those enslaved for debt. He forbids using one's person as loan collateral. This helps the poor, but doesn't give them land redistribution, disappointing radicals. He reforms the political system. He creates 4 property classes based on agricultural production, pentakosiomedimnoi, producing 500 plus measures of grain, hippes, 300 plus measures, zeugitai, 200 plus measures, and thetes, below 200. Political rights now depend on wealth, not birth. The top 3 classes can hold office. Even thetes can vote in the assembly and serve on juries. This isn't democracy yet. The wealthy still dominate, but Solon opens the system. Nouveau riches can now participate. Birth alone doesn't determine power. He establishes a council of 400, drawn from the top 3 classes, to prepare business for the assembly. He enhances the assembly's judicial powers. He publishes laws on wooden tablets, making them public knowledge instead of aristocratic secrets. Solon encourages economic development. He forbids exporting grain from Attica, but allows exporting olive oil, encouraging farmers to plant olive groves. He invites foreign craftsmen to settle in Athens, offering citizenship to those who relocate with families. This attracts skilled potters, metalworkers, and other artisans. His reforms dissatisfy everyone partially, but avert civil war. He famously writes, "I stood holding my strong shield over both parties. I did not allow either to win an unjust victory." After legislating, Solon leaves Athens for 10 years, traveling to Egypt and Cyprus. He wants his laws to stand on their own, without his presence influencing interpretation. They don't hold. Aristocratic factions immediately resume fighting for control. Athens experiences stasis, factional violence. 1 year passes with no archon elected because factions can't agree. Around 561 BC, Pisistratus, a military hero from the northern Demes, seizes power with a bodyguard. He's a tyrant, but not in the modern sense. Ancient Greek tyranny means seizing power illegally, usually with popular support against aristocratic elites. Pisistratus rules cleverly. He maintains Solon's laws outwardly while ensuring his supporters fill offices. He redistributes land confiscated from exiled opponents to poor farmers. He provides loans to small farmers, encouraging agricultural development. He taxes just lightly enough to fund public works without provoking revolt. He's overthrown twice, exiled by aristocratic rivals. Each time he returns, building support, refining his power base. Around 546 BC, he returns with mercenaries, defeats his opponents at Pallene, and rules uncontested until his death in 528 BC. Pisistratus makes Athens beautiful. He begins building projects on the Acropolis, dedicates temples, organizes festivals. The Panathenaic festival, honoring Athena, becomes spectacular under his patronage. He establishes the city Dionysia, a dramatic festival that later produces Greek tragedy. He supports culture. Tradition claims he commissions the first official written text of Homer's epics. True or not, Athens becomes a cultural center under his rule. Poets and artists find patronage. His sons, Hippias and Hipparchus, succeed him. They continue their father's policies initially, but power corrupts. Around 514 BC, two lovers, Harmodius and Aristogeiton, attempt to overthrow the tyranny. They manage to eliminate Hipparchus during the Panathenaic festival, but are immediately caught and dispatched. Hippias survives, growing paranoid and repressive. Sparta, ideologically opposed to tyranny, invades Attica around 5 or 10 BC. The Alcmaeonid family, aristocratic exiles who've been bribing Delphi's oracle to recommend Sparta intervene, support the invasion. Hippias flees to Persia. With the tyranny ended, aristocratic factions resume fighting. Isagoras and Cleisthenes, both aristocrats, compete for dominance. Isagoras allies with Sparta. Cleisthenes turns to the people. Around 508 BC, Cleisthenes proposes radical reforms. He reorganizes Attica into 139 demes, local districts. These demes group into 30 trides, which in turn form 10 new tribes. The crucial innovation: each tribe contains demes from coastal, inland, and urban areas. This breaks aristocratic regional power bases. Citizens now identify primarily by tribe, not aristocratic clan or region. The new tribal system creates artificial but binding political identities. Cleisthenes expands the council to 500, 50 members from each tribe selected by lot from those volunteering. This bull prepares business for the assembly, which now makes final decisions on war, peace, laws, and major policies. The assembly gains real power. Any citizen can speak. Isagoria, equality of speech, becomes fundamental. Decisions are made by majority vote. Cleisthenes introduces ostracism. Once yearly, the assembly can vote to exile someone for 10 years without trial. Citizens scratch a name on pottery sherds, ostraka. If 6,000 votes are cast and one person receives the most, he's exiled. This provides a safety valve against tyranny and factional violence without bloodshed. These reforms create democracy, rule by the demos, the people. Not complete democracy. Women can't vote. Medics, foreign residents can't vote. Enslaved people certainly can't vote. But for male citizens, Athens creates unprecedented political equality and participation. The aristocrats, led by Isagoras, resist. They call in Sparta again. King Cleomenes arrives with troops, intending to install an oligarchy. The Athenian people rise up, besieging Cleomenes and his Spartan soldiers on the Acropolis. After 2 days, Cleomenes negotiates withdrawal. Athens has defended democracy by force. The people taste their own power. Cleisthenes' reforms stick. Athens transitions from aristocratic dominance through tyranny to popular government in barely a century. No other Greek city follows this exact path, though democratic elements appear elsewhere. Athens in 500 BC is becoming something new, a city where ordinary citizens debate policy, serve on juries, hold magistracies by lot, where political power flows from popular participation rather than birth or wealth alone. The Athenian experiment in collective self-government is beginning. It will face immediate existential challenges. The Persian giant, Cyrus and Darius, turn west. The Greek world in 546 BC is fractious, city-states quarreling over borders and trade routes. Then everything changes. A new power emerges in the east, dwarfing anything Greeks have encountered. Cyrus II of Persia builds an empire. He starts as king of Anshan, a small Persian state vassal to Media. Around 550 BC, Cyrus rebels against his Median overlord Astyages. He wins, conquering Media and uniting Persians and Medes into a single kingdom. This is just the beginning. Around 547 BC, Cyrus marches west toward Lydia. King Croesus of Lydia controls western Anatolia, including the Greek cities of Ionia along the coast. Croesus is fabulously wealthy. The phrase, rich as Croesus, enters languages. He consults Delphi's oracle about attacking Persia. The oracle responds, if you cross the Halys River, you will destroy a great empire. Croesus crosses. He destroys an empire, his own. Cyrus defeats Croesus decisively, capturing Sardis, Lydia's capital, around 546 BC. Lydia becomes a Persian province. The Ionian Greek cities, previously paying tribute to Lydia, now face new masters. Cyrus turns east, conquering Central Asia, establishing Persian control from Anatolia to the borders of India. Around 539 BC, he conquers Babylon, the ancient Mesopotamian capital. His empire becomes the largest the world has yet seen. His son Cambyses II conquers Egypt around 525 BC, bringing the Nile Delta and its Greek trading settlement at Naucratis under Persian control. When Cambyses dies around 522 BC, a succession crisis erupts. Darius I, a distant relative from a collateral branch of the royal family, seizes the throne. He spends 3 years crushing revolts across the empire. Then he reorganizes it brilliantly. Darius divides the empire into satrapies, provinces governed by appointed satraps. Each satrapy pays fixed tribute in gold or silver. He standardizes coinage, creating the Daric gold coin. He builds the royal road, stretching nearly 2,500 kilometers from Sardis to Susa, with postal stations allowing royal messengers to carry information swiftly. Herodotus notes with admiration that neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stops the messengers. The Achaemenid Empire, as historians call it, controls perhaps 50 million people. It's multi-ethnic, multi-religious, tolerant by ancient standards. Cyrus famously allowed Jews exiled to Babylon to return home and rebuild their temple. The empire's official language is Aramaic, but local languages persist. It's not a centralized tyranny, but a sophisticated administrative system managing enormous diversity. The Ionian Greeks chafe under Persian rule. They've enjoyed independence or minimal oversight under Lydia. Now they pay tribute to distant Susa. Worse, Persia installs friendly tyrants to govern each city, undermining traditional political systems. In 499 BC, Aristagoras, tyrant of Miletus, faces a problem. He's convinced Darius to support an expedition against the island of Naxos, promising easy conquest. The expedition fails disastrously. Aristagoras fears Darius will blame him, strip him of power, possibly worse. He makes a desperate choice. He renounces his tyranny, proclaims Miletus a democracy, and calls on other Ionian cities to revolt against Persia. The Ionian revolt begins. Aristagoras sails to mainland Greece, seeking allies. He goes to Sparta first. King Cleomenes listens to his pitch, examines a bronze map showing the Persian Empire's vastness. When he realizes Susa is 3 months' march from the coast, he refuses involvement. Athens responds differently. The Athenians have recent history with Persia. When Hippias was expelled as tyrant around 510 BC, he eventually fled to the Persian court, seeking restoration. The Athenians asked Sparta to block this, but Persia's power worries them. They also share ethnic ties with the Ionians. Athens sends 20 ships to support the revolt. Eretria, Athens' neighbor on Euboea, sends 5 more. This is modest support, but it's something. In 498 BC, Ionian rebels march on Sardis, the satrapal capital. Athens and Eretria's troops participate. They capture the lower city and burn it. The citadel holds, and Persian forces rally. The Greeks retreat, fighting a running battle back to the coast. Darius is furious. His capital, ancient Lydia's seat, burned by Greeks. He has his servant remind him 3 times daily, "Master, remember the Athenians." The revolt spreads across Ionia and Cyprus. For 5 years, Greek rebels resist Persian reconquest, but Persia's resources are overwhelming. The empire systematically suppresses the revolt city by city. In 494 BC, the decisive battle occurs at Lade, an island near Miletus. The Ionian fleet musters perhaps 353 ships. The Persian fleet, largely Phoenician, numbers around 600. Just before battle, the Samian contingent sails away, having secretly negotiated with Persia. Other contingents panic and flee. The remaining Ionians are destroyed. Miletus falls shortly after. Persia razes the city. The population is enslaved or relocated. When Athens stages Phrynichus' tragedy, the capture of Miletus, audiences weep openly. The city fines Phrynichus for reminding them of their failure to help adequately. The revolt is crushed by 493 BC. Darius reorganizes Ionia carefully. Surprisingly, he removes the tyrants, allowing more democratic governance. But there's no mistaking who rules. Persia controls the Aegean's eastern shore. Darius isn't finished. The Athenians and Eretrians burned Sardis. They supported rebellion against the great king. This cannot stand unpunished. In 492 BC, Darius sends his son-in-law, Mardonius, with an army and fleet westward. The expedition aims to subjugate Thrace and Macedonia, creating a land bridge to Greece. It succeeds, but storms destroy much of the fleet off Mount Athos. Mardonius returns to Persia. In 490 BC, Darius tries again. He appoints Datis the Mede and Artaphernes, his own nephew, to command a seaborne expedition directly across the Aegean. The targets are specific: punish Eretria and Athens. The expedition carries perhaps 25,000 troops, estimates vary. It's not a full-scale invasion, but a punitive raid. The fleet sails through the Cyclades, demanding earth and water, symbols of submission. Most islands comply. The fleet stops at Delos, sacred to Apollo. Deities makes elaborate sacrifices demonstrating Persian respect for Greek gods. The message is clear: submit and we're generous. Resist and face destruction. The Persians reach Euboea. They besiege Eretria. After 7 days, traders open the gates. The Persians burn the city and enslave the population. Hippias, the exiled Athenian tyrant now in his 80s, guides them. He assures Darius that Athens will welcome his restoration. The Persian fleet crosses to Attica, landing at Marathon, a bay roughly 42 kilometers northeast of Athens. The terrain is favorable for cavalry, which the Persians employ effectively. More importantly, Hippias knows this area. He landed here decades ago when seizing power. The invasion of mainland Greece has begun. The greatest military power on earth faces a small democratic city-state. Athens stands alone. Its army marches north to Marathon. Everything is about to change. The Battle of Marathon, a ghost army's triumph. The Persian fleet lands at Marathon in late summer 490 BC. 25,000 soldiers, perhaps more, disembark onto the long beach. Cavalry, archers, elite infantry called the Immortals. They establish camp and wait. Athens musters its army. Every citizen of military age responds to the call. The hoplites gather, each man providing his own armor: bronze helmet, breastplate, greaves protecting shins, round aspis shield, spear, and short sword. This is the phalanx, Greece's signature military formation. The Athenian army numbers perhaps 9,000 hoplites. They march north under 10 generals, elected commanders who rotate daily command. Among them is Miltiades, who knows Persians well. He fought for them years ago in the Chersonese before fleeing Persian wrath. Athens sends a runner to Sparta requesting aid. Pheidippides, a professional long-distance messenger, covers 240 kilometers in 2 days. An incredible feat. The Spartans agree to help but explain they're celebrating the Carneia festival. Religious law forbids military campaigns during this sacred period. They'll come after the full moon. Athens can't wait. The Persians are here now. At Marathon, the Athenians establish camp in the foothills, blocking the roads toward Athens. A contingent from tiny Plataea, Athens' ally, arrives. 600 hoplites. Their presence is militarily insignificant but psychologically vital. Athens doesn't stand completely alone. The two armies watch each other for days. Persian cavalry patrols the plain. Athenian generals debate. Some argue for waiting behind Athens' walls. Miltiades advocates attacking. He argues the longer they wait, the more opportunity for Persian cavalry to maneuver and for pro-Persian factions in Athens to betray the city. The generals vote. 5 support waiting. 5 support attacking. The deciding vote belongs to Callimachus, the Polemarch, Athens' war archon. He sides with Miltiades. The Athenians will attack. But when? Miltiades waits for the moment when Persian cavalry is absent from the field. Ancient sources suggest the cavalry boarded ships, perhaps preparing to sail around Attica toward Athens directly. On September 12th, 490 BC, the moment comes. No Persian cavalry visible. Miltiades deploys the phalanx across the plain about a mile from the Persian camp. He makes a critical tactical decision. The Greek center is thinner than normal. The wings are strengthened. He knows the center will likely break under Persian pressure, but the wings might envelop. At dawn, the Greeks advance. Normally, hoplites advance slowly, maintaining formation. At Marathon, they run the final distance, perhaps 200 meters at full sprint. This minimizes exposure to Persian arrows, which can devastate slow-moving infantry. The phalanxes crash into Persian lines. The noise is terrible. Bronze on bronze, shields splintering, men screaming. The packed formations make individual skill less important than cohesion and weight. The Persian center, stronger and deeper, pushes back the thin Athenian middle. The Greek line bends, it's breaking. But the Athenian wings, stronger and commanded by Themistocles and Aristides, crush the Persian flanks. The barbarian troops, lighter armed than Greek hoplites, can't withstand the concentrated bronze charge. The Athenian wings wheel inward. The maneuver Miltiades planned is working. The Persians in the center, advancing against the weak Greek middle, suddenly have Greeks behind them. Encircled. Panic spreads. The Persian line collapses. Men flee toward their ships. The Athenians pursue, now fighting on the beach itself. They try to capture ships. Callimachus falls here, fighting heroically. Cynaegirus, Aeschylus's brother, grabs a Persian ship's stern and has his hand chopped off by an axe. The Persians push their ships into the sea and escape. 7 vessels are captured. The rest sail away. The battlefield is carnage. Herodotus, writing later, claims 6,400 Persians died compared to 192 Athenians. Modern historians suspect inflation, but the disproportion is probably real. The phalanx used correctly against lighter troops in favorable terrain is devastatingly effective. But Athens isn't safe yet. The Persian fleet sails south around Attica's coast toward Athens itself. If the city is undefended, they could land, install Hippias, and claim victory despite the battlefield defeat. The Athenian army runs, 42 kilometers from Marathon to Athens in full armor. They arrive before the Persian fleet appears offshore. Seeing the victorious army defending the city, the Persians don't attempt landing. They sail back to Asia. Athens has won an impossible victory. A citizen militia defeated the great king's army. The impact transcends military facts. Athens proves Greek heavy infantry can defeat Persian troops. The psychological effect is enormous. Before Marathon, Persia seemed invincible. After, Greeks believe they can resist. Athens buries its 192 fallen on the battlefield under a great mound, the Soros, which still stands today. Each man receives honors normally reserved for heroes. The Plataeans who fought alongside Athens are forever remembered as friends. But Marathon creates tension too. Miltiades becomes a hero. The people grant him extraordinary honors. Power goes to his head. He requests ships and troops for an expedition to the Cyclades, refusing to specify the target. The Athenians grant his request. He attacks Paros, seeking personal revenge against political enemies there. The siege fails. Miltiades returns wounded and disgraced. He's tried, fined, and dies from his wound shortly after. The lesson: even heroes answer to the democracy. Darius is humiliated. The great king doesn't lose battles to small cities. He begins preparing a larger expedition, but around 486 BC he dies. His son Xerxes inherits the throne and the unfinished business with Greece. Athens knows the Persians will return. Marathon bought time, not safety. The city begins preparing for the inevitable second invasion. The young politician Themistocles, who commanded the Athenian left wing at Marathon, starts pushing a radical idea. Athens must build a navy, not 20 ships, but hundreds. The future won't be decided by hoplites on land, but by triremes at sea. He finds his opportunity in 483 BC. Athens' silver mines at Laurium strike an especially rich vein. Normally, this windfall would be distributed to citizens. Themistocles convinces the assembly to use it for shipbuilding instead. He doesn't emphasize Persia. He focuses on Athens' rivalry with nearby Aegina. The assembly approves funding for 200 triremes. Athens becomes a naval power. When Xerxes comes, Athens will be ready, not with walls or hoplites alone, but with a fleet that can contest Persian naval superiority. Marathon is Athens' finest hour, a democratic city defending its freedom against an empire. The victory becomes mythical in Athenian imagination, the proof that free citizens fight better than conscripted subjects. The playwright Aeschylus, who fought at Marathon, wants his epitaph to mention not his plays but his service there. This tomb conceals Aeschylus, whose worth the grain-rich fields of Marathon could tell, and the long-haired Medes who knew it well. Marathon doesn't end the Persian threat. It demonstrates Greek potential. The real test is coming. The Great Invasion. Xerxes and the 300. Xerxes doesn't just want to punish Athens, he wants to conquer Greece entirely. For 4 years after becoming great king in 486 BC, he suppresses revolts in Egypt and Babylon. Then he turns westward. He assembles the largest expeditionary force the ancient world has yet seen. Herodotus claims 1.7 million soldiers plus support personnel. Modern historians consider this wildly inflated. Xerxes probably musters around 200,000 troops, perhaps 80,000 combatants. Even conservative estimates make this the largest army ever assembled against Greece. The logistics are staggering. Feeding this force requires planning years in advance. Xerxes orders supply depots established along the route through Thrace and Macedonia. He commands engineers to dig a canal through the Mount Athos Peninsula, avoiding the storms that destroyed Mardonius's fleet in 492 BC. He orders twin pontoon bridges built across the Hellespont, the strait separating Asia from Europe. When storms destroy the bridges, Xerxes reportedly orders the sea whipped with chains and branded with hot irons for disobedience. Whether true or not, the story illustrates Persian imperial ambition and Greek perceptions of Persian hubris. New bridges are built. In spring 480 BC, the army begins crossing. Herodotus says it takes 7 days and nights for the entire force to pass. At Doriscus in Thrace, Xerxes reviews his troops. Contingents from across the empire parade: Persians, Medes, Indians, Ethiopians, Scythians, dozens of peoples. The navy numbers perhaps 600 warships, mostly Phoenician and Egyptian. The Greeks are terrified. Most city-states submit immediately, offering earth and water. Xerxes demands nothing less than complete surrender, but some resist. Athens and Sparta reject submission. When Xerxes sends ambassadors demanding surrender, the Spartans throw them down a well, telling them to get earth and water themselves. Athens similarly treats Persian envoys. These acts violate sacred diplomatic norms but signal absolute defiance. 31 Greek cities form a defensive alliance, the Hellenic League. Sparta, the dominant military power, takes command. The allies debate strategy. Northern Greeks want defense lines in Thessaly. Peloponnesians want to fortify the Isthmus of Corinth and abandon everything north. Athens insists on defending Attica. Themistocles shapes strategy. His massive naval investment gives Athens leverage. Without Athens' 200 triremes, the Greek fleet is inadequate. He argues for a two-part defense: delay the Persian army at Thermopylae while the fleet engages at Artemisium. Both positions are narrow, negating Persian numerical superiority. In August 480 BC, a small force marches north to Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, a narrow coastal pass between mountains and sea. Leonidas, one of Sparta's kings, commands. He brings 300 Spartan citizens, all fathers of living sons, ensuring their bloodlines continue. Various allied contingents join, totaling perhaps 7,000 Greeks. This force can't stop Xerxes permanently. It can buy time for the main Greek forces to prepare and for Athens to evacuate. The Persians arrive. Xerxes waits 4 days, expecting the Greeks to flee. They don't. He sends soldiers to investigate. The scouts report something strange: Spartan soldiers exercising and combing their long hair. Xerxes consults Demaratus, an exiled Spartan king serving as his advisor. Demaratus explains, Spartans prepare for death. On the 5th day, Xerxes attacks. Waves of infantry assault the pass. The Greeks, fighting in narrow confines where Persian numbers mean nothing, slaughter them. The phalanx holds. Bodies pile up. For 2 days, Persians attack unsuccessfully. Then a Greek traitor, Ephialtes, shows Xerxes a mountain path around the pass. Xerxes sends his elite immortals through the path at night. When scouts report the flanking force, most Greek allies retreat south on Leonidas' orders. The Spartans remain. So do 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans. On the 3rd day, surrounded, the Greeks fight to annihilation. They abandon the pass's narrow confines and fight in the wider space where all can engage. Leonidas falls. Fighting over his body is ferocious. Twice the Spartans recover it, driving Persians back. Finally, overwhelmed, the survivors retreat to a hillock. They fight with spears until spears break, then swords until swords break, then with hands and teeth. Persian archers, standing at distance, finish them with arrows. Every Spartan dies. Every Thespian dies. The Thebans surrender. Xerxes orders Leonidas' body decapitated and crucified, violating normal practice of respecting fallen enemies. He's that angry about the delay and losses. Meanwhile, the Greek fleet fights at Artemisium. For 3 days, they battle the Persian navy inconclusively. When news arrives of Thermopylae's fall, the fleet retreats south. Central Greece lies open to Xerxes. His army marches through Boeotia. Thebes, always hostile to Athens, Medes, joining the Persians. Athens evacuates. The population flees to Salamis Island, to Troezen, to anywhere safe. The city is nearly empty when Persians arrive. They burn Athens. The Acropolis temples, the agora, the houses. Everything. Themistocles' strategy is in shambles. Thermopylae delayed the Persians but couldn't stop them. Now Athens is destroyed, its people refugees. The Peloponnesian allies want to retreat to the isthmus, building a wall and defending only the Peloponnese. Themistocles knows this is disaster. A land wall can't stop the Persian navy from landing troops wherever they want. The only hope is naval victory. He needs to force battle on Greek terms. But how? Standing on Salamis, watching Athens burn across the strait, Themistocles begins to plan. The final gambit. Everything depends on the next few days. The Spartans at Thermopylae become immortal in Greek memory. Simonides writes the famous epitaph, "Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here obedient to their laws we lie, 300 men buying time with their lives." The story embodies Spartan values: courage, obedience, sacrifice. Later generations romanticize Thermopylae endlessly, but at the time, it's a defeat. A brave defeat, but still a defeat. Persia has broken through. The real test is coming at sea. Salvation at sea, the battles of Salamis and Plataea. The Greek fleet gathers at Salamis in early September 480 BC. About 380 triremes, perhaps 70,000 men counting rowers and marines. The Peloponnesian commanders want to sail immediately to the Isthmus of Corinth. Themistocles knows this is catastrophe. The wide waters off the isthmus favor the larger, more numerous Persian fleet. The Greeks need narrow confines where tactical skill trumps numbers. He threatens, if the fleet abandons Salamis, Athens will immediately evacuate to Italy, founding a new city. Athens' 200 ships will go with them. Without Athens' vessels, the remaining Greek fleet is inadequate. The Peloponnesians need Athens as much as Athens needs them. The fleet stays, but the commanders remain divided. They argue constantly about when to fight, whether to fight. Xerxes' army on shore can watch the allied camp, see their descent and uncertainty. Themistocles makes his boldest move. He sends a trusted slave, Sisinus, to Xerxes with a message. The Greek fleet plans to escape tonight. If Persians seal the straits now, they'll trap Greeks in Salamis Bay and destroy them at leisure. It's a trap. Themistocles wants battle in the narrow straits. He needs Xerxes to force the issue. Xerxes believes the message. Why wouldn't he? The Greeks are clearly fractured. He orders his fleet to seal the straits under darkness. Egyptian ships block the western exit. The main Phoenician and Ionian squadrons position at the eastern entrance. When dawn breaks on September 23 or 24, 480 BC, the Greek commanders discover they're trapped. There's no retreat. They must fight. The Greeks row out from Salamis. The Persian fleet, perhaps 600 ships, enters the straits. But the narrows limit how many can engage simultaneously. The Persians can't use their numerical advantage. Ships jam together, fouling each other's oars. The Greeks attack in disciplined formation. The trireme is a bronze-beak battering ram powered by 170 rowers. Greek crews train endlessly for coordinated maneuvers. The Athenian ships especially excel. They row directly into Persian vessels, ramming and backing before the enemy can respond. The Persians fight bravely but chaotically. Different squadrons speak different languages, coordinate poorly. The narrow waters become a catastrophe. Persian ships collide with each other. Greek triremes ram them, shearing oars, splintering hulls. Marines leap aboard disabled vessels, fighting hand to hand. Xerxes watches from a throne erected on a shore overlooking the straits. He sees his fleet disintegrating. The Phoenician ships on his left wing suffer terribly. Many destroyed or captured. The Ionians on the right perform better but can't change the battle's momentum. By day's end, perhaps 200 Persian ships are destroyed or captured. The Greeks lose maybe 40. It's a crushing naval defeat. One incident becomes famous. Artemisia, queen of Halicarnassus, commanding Persian ships, finds herself pursued by an Athenian trireme. To escape, she rams another Persian vessel. The Athenian captain, thinking she's switched sides, breaks off pursuit. Artemisia's ship escapes. Xerxes, watching from shore and not realizing she struck an ally, reportedly says, "My men have become women, and my women, men." After Salamis, Xerxes' strategy collapses. He can't supply his massive army without naval superiority. He can't protect his supply lines or communications. He retreats toward Asia with most of the army, leaving Mardonius with perhaps 80,000 troops to winter in Thessaly. The Greeks have won breathing room, but the war isn't over. Mardonius is a brilliant general, commanding a formidable force. Through winter 480 479 BC, Mardonius tries diplomacy. He offers Athens generous terms: alliance with Persia, autonomy, money to rebuild. The Spartans, fearing Athens might accept, finally send ambassadors promising serious military support. Athens rejects Persian offers. Mardonius responds by marching south, occupying and burning Athens again in summer 479 BC. The Spartans, reluctantly, march north with the largest army they've ever fielded. Pausanias, nephew of the fallen Leonidas, commands. The Greek allied army numbers perhaps 40,000 hoplites plus light troops. The armies confront each other near Plataea in Boeotia. For days, they maneuver without committing to battle. Mardonius commands cavalry, which harasses Greek supply lines. The Greeks occupy ridges with access to water. After Persian cavalry fouls the Greeks' water supply, Pausanias orders a nighttime withdrawal to a better position. The maneuver goes badly. Units become separated in darkness. By dawn, the Greek army is scattered across the plain in confused detachments. Mardonius sees his opportunity and attacks. Persian cavalry charges the isolated Spartans. The Spartan allies from Tegea stand firm beside them. Infantry follows up the cavalry charge. This is the moment. Pausanias, commanding the Spartan detachment, waits for favorable omens before ordering the phalanx forward. The delay seems agonizing, but Spartan discipline holds. Finally, the omens are favorable. The Spartans advance. Their phalanx crashes into Persian infantry. For perhaps an hour, the battle hangs uncertain. Persian troops fight skillfully behind wicker shields, shooting arrows, throwing javelins, but the bronze phalanx is irresistible at close quarters. The Spartans push forward. Mardonius, fighting from horseback in the thick of combat, falls. His death breaks Persian morale. The line collapses. Persians flee toward their fortified camp. Meanwhile, the Athenians, positioned on the Greek left, defeat the Theban allies fighting for Persia. Greek victory becomes total. The Greeks storm the Persian camp. Most of Mardonius's army is destroyed. Perhaps 40,000 Persians perish if ancient sources are remotely accurate. Greek losses are much lighter. On the same day, according to tradition, another battle occurs at Mycale on the Ionian coast. The Greek fleet, emboldened by Salamis, has sailed to Asia Minor. They beach their ships and attack the Persian fleet's shore camp. The Ionian Greeks fighting for Persia defect during battle, joining their fellow Greeks. The Persian camp falls. Within a year, Greek cities in Ionia and the Hellespont are revolting against Persian control. The invasion is over. Persia has lost. The Greeks, outnumbered, divided, should have been conquered easily. Instead, they win decisive victories on land and sea. The causes of Greek victory are complex. Narrow battlefields negating Persian numbers, superior heavy infantry tactics, better trained naval crews, internal Persian communication and supply difficulties, Greek desperation fighting for survival. But Greeks emphasize one factor: free citizens fight better than subjects serving a distant king. Democratic Athens and oligarchic Sparta disagree on almost everything, but both value their political autonomy. That freedom, they believe, gives them fighting spirit and Xerxes' conscripted armies lack. Herodotus, writing a generation later, sees the Persian Wars as confirming Greek superiority. His histories investigating why Greeks and Persians fought concludes that Greek political culture and values explain their unlikely triumph. Athens and Sparta emerge as the saviors of Greece. But their alliance won't last. The seeds of future conflict are already planted. Sparta wants to return to its traditional isolation. Athens has different plans entirely. The trireme fleet that won at Salamis gives Athens new ambitions. Naval power means maritime empire, and maritime empire means wealth, influence, and eventually conflict with Sparta. But that's future. For now, Greece celebrates the impossible victory, the preservation of Greek independence, the proof that small, free communities can resist even the greatest empire. The Persian Wars become foundational to Greek identity. They're the stories Greeks tell about themselves, the evidence of their special virtue. The classical age of Greece is about to begin. Salvation at sea, the battles of Salamis and Plataea. Athens burns. The Persians torch the sacred temples on the Acropolis. Everything the Athenians built, everything they believed made them civilized, goes up in smoke. Xerxes stands watching, satisfied. He's avenged his father's defeat at Marathon. The Greek alliance appears broken, but the Athenian fleet still floats in the narrow straits of Salamis. Themistocles orchestrated this moment years before anyone else saw it coming. After Marathon, while other Athenians wanted to celebrate, he pushed for ships. More ships. He convinced the assembly to spend silver from the Laurion mines on building a navy instead of distributing it to citizens. 200 triremes, the largest fleet Greece had ever seen. Now those ships represent the last hope. The Greek commanders argue. Some want to retreat to the Isthmus of Corinth, protect the Peloponnese, abandon Athens completely. The Spartans especially push this position. Eurybiades commands the allied fleet, but Themistocles holds the real power. Athens contributes more than half the ships. Themistocles needs the Persians to attack here in these narrow waters. The Persian fleet outnumbers the Greeks perhaps 2-1. In open ocean, those numbers would crush the alliance. But in the tight straits between Salamis and the mainland, Persian numbers become a liability. The problem? Xerxes might not take the bait. He could simply blockade the Greeks and wait, or he could ignore the fleet entirely and march south. So Themistocles sends a slave named Sisinus to the Persian camp. The message Sisinus delivers claims Themistocles wants to defect, that the Greeks plan to flee during the night, that Xerxes should attack immediately to trap them. Xerxes believes it. Why wouldn't he? The Greeks seem defeated, their city destroyed, their alliance fracturing. The Persian fleet moves into position during the night, squadrons from Phoenicia, Egypt, Ionia, all the maritime subjects of the empire. They block both exits from the straits. Egyptian ships sail around Salamis to cut off the western escape route. The trap seems perfect. Dawn breaks on September 480 BC. The Greeks row out to meet them, singing the paean, the battle hymn to Apollo. Xerxes sits on a golden throne on Mount Aegaleos, watching. Scribes stand ready to record which commanders perform bravely, which fail. The Persian fleet enters the straits. Immediately, problems emerge. The channel runs perhaps 1,000 meters wide at its narrowest. Ships designed for open water maneuvering find themselves packed together. Oars tangle. Formation becomes impossible. The Greek triremes, lighter and more agile, exploit every advantage. They ram Persian ships in the flanks, the vulnerable points where oars protrude. They reverse quickly, strike again. The Persians cannot bring their numbers to bear. Ships pile up trying to advance. Those in front get rammed and holed. Those behind push forward, making the chaos worse. Artemisia of Halicarnassus, commanding ships for Xerxes, realizes the disaster unfolding. She rams one of her own allied vessels to escape a pursuing Greek trireme, making the Greeks think she's on their side. She survives. Most Persian commanders aren't so clever or ruthless. The battle turns into a slaughter. Persians who fall into the water drown, unable to swim. Greeks who go overboard swim to Salamis, rejoin the fight. The corpses float so thick that debris blocks entire sections of the strait. By afternoon, the Persian fleet breaks. Survivors flee toward Phalerum. The Greeks pursue, ramming stragglers, capturing ships. Xerxes watches his navy dissolve. The strategic situation reverses completely. Without naval superiority, Xerxes cannot supply a massive army in Greece. The Aegean belongs to the Greek fleet now. Persian communication lines back to Asia become vulnerable. Xerxes returns to Persia, leaving Mardonius with a picked force to continue the campaign. Perhaps 300,000 men, though ancient numbers always exaggerate. Still formidable, still larger than anything the Greeks can field. But the initiative has shifted. Mardonius winters in Thessaly, then tries diplomacy. He offers Athens alliance, autonomy, money. The Athenians refuse. They've committed everything to resistance. Their city lies in ruins. They have nothing left to negotiate with, except their fleet and their determination. Spring arrives. Mardonius marches south again, reoccupies Athens. The Athenians evacuate to Salamis a second time. They send increasingly desperate messages to Sparta. The Spartans celebrate a religious festival, delay mobilizing. Politics and piety combined. Finally, Spartan leadership calculates the consequences of Persian victory. If Athens falls or switches sides, the Persian fleet gets rebuilt with Athenian ships and crews. The Isthmus wall becomes irrelevant. The Peloponnese falls. The Spartan army marches north. Pausanias, nephew of Leonidas, commands. 5,000 Spartiates, the full citizen body capable of fighting. 35,000 helots serving as light infantry, contingents from every Peloponnesian city. The Athenians contribute 8,000 hoplites. Other Greek states send men. The largest Greek army ever assembled concentrates in Boeotia, perhaps 100,000 Greeks total, though again numbers from ancient sources require skepticism. Mardonius withdraws from Athens, pulls back to Thebes. The Thebans support Persia, provide friendly territory. More importantly, the plains near Plataea offer terrain suitable for cavalry. Persian horsemen have terrorized the Greeks throughout the campaign. On flat ground, they dominate. The two armies face each other across the Asopus River in August 479 BC. Days pass in skirmishing. Persian cavalry raid Greek supply lines. Greek hoplites hold their positions on higher ground. Neither side wants to attack uphill or cross the river under enemy observation. Mardonius executes a successful cavalry raid that fouls the Greek water supply. Pausanias decides to retreat during the night to a better position, but the retreat becomes disorganized. Units become separated in darkness. Dawn finds the Greek army scattered, vulnerable. Mardonius sees his opportunity. He attacks. The Persian center charges the Spartans, who have become isolated from the main Greek force. Arrows darken the sky. Persian infantry advances behind wicker shields. For a while, the Spartans hold formation, take casualties, wait. Pausanias sacrifices, reads omens, waits for the gods' approval to attack. His men die around him. Finally, the signs prove favorable. The Spartan phalanx advances. What happens next demonstrates why Greek hoplites dominated infantry warfare in this era. The Persian soldiers, individually brave and well-equipped, cannot stand against the massed bronze and iron of the phalanx. The Spartans push forward in perfect synchronization, shields locked, spears thrusting. The Persian line bends, breaks, collapses. Mardonius, fighting in the front ranks like a Persian noble should, falls during the melee. With their commander gone, Persian morale shatters completely. The rout begins. Persians flee toward their fortified camp. The Spartans pursue, but struggle with the wooden walls. The Athenians arrive, veterans of siege warfare. They breach the defenses. Inside the camp, the massacre completes what the battle started. According to Herodotus, only 3,000 Persians survive from Mardonius's force. The number seems impossibly low, probably represents the noble cavalry and guards who could afford fast horses. Thousands more likely escape, but the Persian field army in Greece ceases to exist as a fighting force. The same day, tradition claims, the Greek fleet destroys the remaining Persian navy at Mycale on the Ionian coast. The Persians beach their ships, build a stockade. The Greeks attack anyway, storm the position, burn the vessels. Ionia rises in revolt. The Persian invasions end. The greatest empire in the world, stretching from India to Egypt, has been stopped by a collection of city-states that barely cooperate. The victory changes everything. Greek confidence soars. The defensive alliance transforms into something more ambitious. Within a generation, Athens will build an empire on the foundation of these victories. But first, the Greeks have to bury their dead, rebuild their cities, and reckon with what they've accomplished. They defeated Persia. Now they'll have to deal with each other. The Athenian Empire, Delian League to imperial power. The Persians are gone, but their shadow remains. Greek cities along the Ionian coast celebrate liberation. Then they realize liberation isn't the same as security. Persian garrisons might return. The great king's resources dwarf anything Greece can mobilize. Victory in a few battles doesn't guarantee permanent safety. The Spartans send Pausanias north with a fleet to continue operations. He liberates Byzantium, controls the straits between Europe and Asia, then power corrupts him completely. He starts wearing Persian clothes, adopting Persian customs, allegedly corresponds with Xerxes about betraying Greece. The Spartans recall him in disgrace. Sparta withdraws from the war effort entirely. They're land warriors, not sailors. They worry about Helot revolts at home more than Persian threats abroad. The leadership decides that securing the Peloponnese matters more than liberating distant Ionians. Athens steps into the vacuum. Aristides the Just, an Athenian statesman known for fairness, proposes a new alliance in 478 BC. The treasury will be kept on the sacred island of Delos, neutral ground. Each member contributes either ships or money according to their capacity. Decisions get made by common vote. The purpose? Continue offensive operations against Persia, protect Greek cities, exact revenge. They call it the Delian League. Over 200 city-states join initially. Most choose to pay tribute rather than provide ships. Building and maintaining triremes requires expensive timber, skilled craftsmen, trained crews. Easier to send silver, let Athens do the fighting. Athens happily accepts this arrangement. Cimon, son of Miltiades the Marathon victor, commands the League fleet. He's everything Athenians admire, brave, successful, aristocratic, but democratic. Under his leadership, the League wins victory after victory. Persian strongholds fall. Pirate bases get destroyed. Trade routes become secure. The League's success creates its own problems. Some member cities decide they've paid enough, contributed enough, want out. They made an alliance, not a permanent commitment. Athens disagrees about the permanent part. When Naxos attempts to withdraw around 470 BC, Athens besieges the island. Naxos surrenders. Instead of accepting their departure, Athens tears down Naxos's walls, confiscates their fleet, converts their ship contribution to a tribute payment. They make an example. The pattern repeats. Cities try to leave. Athens forces them to stay. Gradually, the alliance transforms into something else. An empire, though Athenians don't use that word yet. The treasury moves from Delos to Athens in 454 BC, supposedly for security reasons. Persian threats have diminished by then. The real reason, Athens wants direct control of the funds. 1/60th of all tribute goes immediately to Athena, funding construction on the Acropolis. The rest finances Athens' fleet, pays rowers' wages, enriches Athenian citizens. The tribute lists carved on stone preserve the evidence. Assessments total perhaps 400 talents of silver annually at the empire's height. That's roughly $15 million in modern equivalent, though comparisons across millennia mean little. The point is scale. Athens collects more revenue than most member states' entire economies produce. This wealth reshapes Athenian society fundamentally. The poorest citizens, the Thetes who own no land, can now serve as rowers and earn wages. They gain political power proportional to their military importance. The fleet needs them. Democracy radicalizes. The empire also requires governance. Athens sends out klerouches, colonies of Athenian citizens who settle in strategic locations while retaining Athenian citizenship. They garrison key points, watch for rebellion, serve as eyes and ears. Other cities receive Athenian judicial oversight. Serious legal cases get transferred to Athenian courts. Local autonomy erodes steadily. Some allies appreciate the arrangement. Smaller cities gain protection from larger neighbors. Democratic factions in oligarchic cities call on Athens to support them, knowing Athens prefers democracies as allies. The empire creates winners who profit from the system, but the pressure builds. Tribute payments weigh heavily. Athenian legal interference feels humiliating. The garrison klerouches occupy prime land. Resentment grows. Mytilene on Lesbos revolts in 428 BC during the Peloponnesian War. Athens reconquers the city, then debates punishment. The assembly initially votes to execute all adult males, enslave all women and children. They send a ship with these orders. Overnight, people reconsider. The assembly meets again. After fierce debate, they narrowly vote to execute only the ringleaders, perhaps 1,000 men. They send a second ship racing to overtake the first. It arrives just in time. This becomes the pattern of Athenian imperialism. Harsh enough to maintain control, not quite harsh enough to provoke universal rebellion. Calculated brutality. The empire brings benefits beyond wealth. Athens becomes the cultural center of the Greek world. Artists, philosophers, merchants, teachers all flow toward the city with money and opportunity. The Parthenon, the Propylaea, the Erechtheion, all get funded by imperial tribute. The dramatic festivals expand. Sophocles and Euripides write tragedies. Socrates questions citizens in the Agora. Imperial Athens creates one of history's great cultural flowerings. The cost? The freedom of other Greeks who pay tribute to fund monuments they'll never own, support a democracy they cannot join, accept Athenian domination they resent but cannot resist. Pericles, the leading statesman for decades, defends the empire without apology. Athens earned this through sacrifice at Marathon Salamis, Plataea. The League members chose tribute over providing ships. They forfeited their equality when they stopped contributing to their own defense. The logic holds a certain ruthless consistency. Power flows from those willing to fight toward those willing to accept others fighting for them. Athens fought. Athens rules. But empires built on force require constant force to maintain. The moment Athens shows weakness, the structure cracks. That moment approaches. Sparta watches, prepares, calculates. The empire has made Athens powerful beyond measure. It has also made Athens the target of every grievance, every resentment, every rival's ambition in the Greek world. The victory over Persia saved Greece. The empire created from that victory will tear Greece apart. The Age of Pericles, glory, gold, and democracy. Stand in the Athenian assembly on any given morning in the 440s BC. 6,000 citizens crowd onto the Pnyx, a rocky hillside west of the Acropolis. They've come to vote on everything from declaring war to approving public construction to ostracizing political rivals. Every male citizen over 18 has an equal voice. The son of a farmer votes alongside aristocrats whose families trace lineage to mythical heroes. One man dominates these gatherings. Pericles, son of Xanthippus. He doesn't look like a natural politician. Ancient sources claim he had an oddly elongated skull which he hid by wearing helmets in most portraits. He rarely smiled. His speaking style avoided theatrical gestures and emotional appeals. Instead, he relied on pure logic, carefully constructed arguments, devastating precision. For nearly 30 years, he guides Athens to unprecedented heights. Pericles recognizes what makes democracy work in practice versus theory. Citizens need time to participate. Poor men working from dawn to dusk cannot attend assemblies, serve on juries, hold offices. So Athens starts paying for civic participation, 2 obols a day for jury duty. Eventually, payments for attending assembly went ahead serving as magistrates. This changes everything. Democracy stops being a system where wealthy citizens make decisions while claiming to represent everyone. It becomes genuine rule by the demos, the people. The poorest citizens gain real political power because they can afford to use it. Critics call this radical. They're correct. No other Greek city attempts anything similar. Most restrict political rights to property owners, often requiring substantial wealth for major offices. Athens gives power to rowers, craftsmen, laborers. The money comes from the empire, the tribute paid by allied cities. Pericles doesn't apologize for this. Athens provides security. Allies pay for that security. Athenian citizens vote on how to spend those funds. The system works, at least for Athenians. The building program demonstrates Periclean ambition at its peak. The Persians destroyed the temples on the Acropolis in 480 BC. For decades, Athens left them in ruins, supposedly honoring an oath never to rebuild what the barbarians profaned. Pericles declares the oath fulfilled by Persian defeats. Work begins on the Parthenon in 447 BC. Phidias, the greatest sculptor in Greece, oversees the project. Ictinus and Callicrates design the temple itself. They're building more than a shrine to Athena. They're constructing a statement in marble about Athenian power, wealth, taste, ambition. The mathematics involved approaches perfection. Every column leans slightly inward. The base curves upward imperceptibly. Columns at corners have larger diameters. These optical corrections prevent the building from appearing to sag or bow. From any angle, the Parthenon looks flawlessly straight. Inside, Phidias creates a statue of Athena nearly 40 feet tall, gold plates over a wooden core, ivory for flesh. She holds a statue of Nike, victory personified. Her shield depicts fighting Amazons. The base shows the birth of Pandora. Every surface tells stories, reinforces ideology, celebrates Athens. The cost? Somewhere near 500 talents of silver. That's more than a year's total tribute from the entire empire. For one building. Critics within Athens attack the expenditure. Thucydides, son of Milesius, not the historian, leads the opposition. He argues Athens has no right to spend allied money on monuments. The tribute exists for defense against Persia, not Athenian glorification. Pericles responds that Athens provides the defense, so Athens decides how to allocate resources. Besides, the building program employs thousands. Masons, carpenters, sculptors, painters, laborers all earn wages. The money circulates through the Athenian economy, benefiting everyone. The assembly sides with Pericles. They ostracize Thucydides in 443 BC, exiling him for 10 years. Political opposition to Pericles effectively collapses. The Parthenon completes in 438 BC. Work continues on the Propylaea, the monumental gateway to the Acropolis. Plans develop for the Erechtheion. Athens transforms into a showcase of classical architecture, art, ambition. But Periclean Athens achieves more than buildings. The city becomes the intellectual center of the Greek world. Sophists arrive from across the Mediterranean, teaching rhetoric, philosophy, argument. Protagoras claims man is the measure of all things. Anaxagoras explains that the sun is not a god, but a hot stone. Herodotus recites his histories of the Persian Wars. The dramatic festivals expand in scale and prestige. Aeschylus, who fought at Marathon, writes tragedies exploring justice, revenge, divine will. Sophocles perfects the art form, adding a third actor, complicating plots, deepening character psychology. His Antigone examines the conflict between human law and divine command. His Oedipus Rex investigates fate, knowledge, hubris. Euripides pushes boundaries further, questioning traditional values, sympathizing with women and slaves, depicting gods as petty and cruel. Conservatives hate his work. It wins prizes anyway. Comedy thrives too. Aristophanes mocks politicians, philosophers, generals, even Socrates. In Clouds, he portrays Socrates as a sophist who teaches students to make worse arguments appear better. The play probably contributed to the later prejudice that got Socrates executed. Democracy permits savage satire of its own leaders. This cultural flowering rests on imperial foundations. The tribute money pays for festivals. The protected trade routes bring international audiences. The naval power ensures Athens stays safe while artists experiment. Pericles himself articulates the vision in a famous funeral oration for war dead, preserved by Thucydides. Athens is the school of Greece, he declares. Athenian democracy proves that ordinary men can govern wisely. Athenian culture shows that freedom produces excellence. Athenian power demonstrates that virtue leads to success. The speech ranks among history's great pieces of political rhetoric. It's also propaganda, selective memory, careful framing. Pericles doesn't mention that Athenian democracy excludes women, slaves, foreigners. He ignores that Athenian culture gets funded by tribute extracted from unwilling subjects. He overlooks that Athenian power depends on constant threat of force. But perhaps all golden ages require selective blindness. The people listening to Pericles live in the wealthiest, most powerful, most creative city Greece has ever known. They've built democracy, defeated Persia, created artistic masterworks. Why dwell on complications? The complications don't vanish through inattention. Sparta grows increasingly alarmed by Athenian expansion. Corinth resents Athenian commercial competition. Thebes fears Athenian influence in Boeotia. The empire's subjects pay tribute while nursing grievances. Pericles knows war approaches. He prepares Athens accordingly. The long walls connecting Athens to Piraeus get completed, making the city virtually unsiegeable as long as the navy controls the sea. Grain supplies from the Black Sea get secured through alliances. The treasury accumulates 6,000 talents in reserve. Pericles also pursues a deliberate strategy of confrontation. When Megara sides with Sparta, Athens bans Megarian goods from all markets in the empire. The decree economically strangles a neighbor, demonstrates Athenian power, dares Sparta to respond. Sparta struggles with the decision. On one hand, Megara is an ally. On the other, war with Athens means years of devastating conflict. The Spartan leadership debates, delays, reconsiders. Pericles expects them to back down. Athens has the wealth, the navy, the empire. Sparta has hoplites and pride. The calculation seems obvious, but Pericles makes the classic mistake of powerful states. He assumes rational cost-benefit analysis determines decisions. He underestimates fear, honor, desperation. Sparta sees Athenian power growing inexorably. Every year of peace makes Athens stronger, Sparta weaker by comparison. The choice becomes fight now while victory remains possible, or submit to gradual Athenian domination. When framed that way, war becomes inevitable. Thucydides later writes that the real cause was Spartan fear of Athenian power. Everything else was just pretext. In 431 BC, Thebes attacks Athens' ally Plataea. The Peloponnesian War begins. Pericles addresses the assembly. He outlines his strategy. Athens will avoid land battles, stay behind the walls, use the navy to raid the Peloponnese. Eventually, Sparta will exhaust itself and accept peace on Athenian terms. The logic appears sound. The execution proves catastrophic. The Golden Age, built on empire, democracy, and cultural achievement, is about to collapse into decades of brutal warfare. The monuments will remain. The democracy will survive, barely. The empire will crumble. And Pericles, who guided Athens to its height, will watch plague and war destroy his vision before he dies in 429 BC. His funeral orations promises turn to ash. The other Greece, rivals and alternatives to Athens. The marble shines in Athens, but Greece is more than one city. Travel west to Corinth, and you see a different kind of power. The city sits on the isthmus connecting the Peloponnese to central Greece, controlling trade routes between the Aegean and Ionian seas. Merchants pull ships across the Diolkos, a paved road spanning the isthmus, rather than sail the dangerous route around the peninsula. Corinth grows wealthy from geography. Import duties, harbor fees, shipbuilding, ceramics, bronze work all pour silver into the city's treasury. Corinthian pottery spreads across the Mediterranean, recognizable by its distinctive style. The city mints its own coins, stamped with Pegasus, the winged horse. But Corinth lacks Athens' empire. They build prosperity through commerce, not tribute. This creates a fundamentally different political culture. The merchant class holds power. They care about trade agreements, piracy suppression, maintaining good relations with customers. War disrupts business. Athens' expanding navy threatens Corinthian interests directly. Athenian ships compete for the same trade routes. Athenian pottery rivals Corinthian craftsmanship. Worse, Athens establishes alliances with Corinthian colonies like Corcyra, interfering in what Corinth considers its sphere of influence. The rivalry becomes personal. When Corcyra and Corinth clash over Epidamnus in 433 BC, Athens sides with Corcyra. Corinth loses the naval battle. The humiliation stings. Corinthian representatives pressure Sparta constantly. Athens must be stopped. If Sparta won't act, Corinth might reconsider its alliances. North in Boeotia, Thebes pursues yet another path to power. The city dominates the Boeotian League, a confederation of towns that theoretically share equal status. In practice, Thebes calls the shots. When Athens tries to extend influence in Boeotia, Thebes resists fiercely. The Thebans fight well. Their sacred band, an elite force of 300 men organized in paired lovers, becomes legendary. The idea is that men fight harder when defending their partners. Whether the psychology works or not, the sacred band never loses a battle for decades. Thebes also maintains a traditional oligarchy, distrusting democracy as mob rule. The wealthy landowners who govern see Athens' system as dangerous radicalism. Give power to the poor, and they'll vote to redistribute property, cancel debts, overturn the natural order. This ideological divide matters as much as military competition. Greek cities don't just fight over land or trade. They fight over competing visions of how society should organize: democracy versus oligarchy, naval power versus hoplite armies, commerce versus agriculture. Each city embodies different answers. Look south to Sparta, the strangest experiment of all. The Spartans built a society with one purpose: producing soldiers. Everything else gets subordinated to that goal. Boys leave home at 7 for the Agoge, the brutal state education system. They endure deliberate hardship, insufficient food, harsh discipline. They learn to fight, obey, endure. At 20, they join a syssitia, a communal mess. They eat the same terrible food, wear the same simple clothes, own almost nothing personally. The system works militarily. Spartan hoplites dominate Greek battlefields. Their discipline, training, cohesion surpass everyone else. When a Spartan phalanx advances, enemies often flee before contact. But this military excellence costs everything else. Sparta produces no art, philosophy, architecture, literature worth mentioning. Spartan citizens cannot engage in commerce or craft work. They train, fight, and govern. The helots, enslaved populations, do all productive labor. This creates permanent instability. Helots outnumber Spartans perhaps 7-1. Sparta exists in a state of perpetual occupation of its own territory. Every year, the ephors ritually declare war on the helots, making their suppression legally sanctioned. The Crypteia, a secret police force, hunts and eliminates potential helot leaders. Living this way twists Spartan society. They fear change, innovation, foreign influence. They resist anything that might upset the delicate balance, keeping helots subjugated. This makes Sparta conservative to the point of paralysis. They oppose Athenian expansion partly from strategic calculation, partly from fear that democratic ideas might infect their own system. Across the sea, Greek colonies flourish in Sicily and southern Italy, the region called Magna Graecia. Syracuse rivals Athens in size and wealth. The city has a magnificent harbor, rich agricultural hinterland, and strategic position for controlling trade with Carthage. Syracuse and other Western Greeks develop differently from their mainland cousins. They fight Carthaginians more than fellow Greeks. They experiment with tyrants, strongmen who seize power and rule through personal authority. Dionysius I of Syracuse builds walls, organizes a professional army, commissions engineering projects. He's brutal, effective, and completely outside the political norms of mainland democracy or oligarchy. Even within the Greek world, diversity reigns. Argos maintains rivalry with Sparta, stretching back to mythical times. Elis controls Olympia and the sacred games. Aegina builds a trading empire from its rocky island. Delphi wields influence through the oracle, priestesses who deliver Apollo's cryptic prophecies to city-states seeking divine guidance. The oracle's pronouncements shape politics. Before major decisions, Greek cities send embassies to Delphi. The Pythia, priestess of Apollo, enters a trance and speaks. Priests interpret her words. The prophecies always prove true, though usually not in the way petitioners expect. This religious unity coexists with political fragmentation. Greeks recognize they share language, gods, culture. The Olympic Games, held every 4 years, require a sacred truce. Wars pause so athletes can compete. Delegates from every Greek city gather to watch wrestling, running, chariot racing. But the truces end, the wars resume. The shared culture doesn't produce political unity. Greeks fight Greeks constantly, vicious local conflicts over borders, water rights, ancient insults. The Persian invasions briefly united them. The threat passed. The unity dissolved. Athens represents one possible future for Greece: empire, democracy, commercial power, cultural innovation. But Corinth offers another: merchant prosperity without imperialism. Sparta shows military excellence through totalitarian discipline. Syracuse demonstrates that strongman rule can bring stability. Thebes proves oligarchy can compete with democracy. No single model dominates. Each city believes its system's superior. Athens thinks democracy liberates human potential. Sparta knows oligarchy and discipline create strength. Corinth trusts that commerce brings more lasting power than conquest. They're all partly right. They're all partly wrong. And they'll spend the next 3 decades destroying each other to prove their respective points. The Peloponnesian War won't be Athens versus Sparta. It'll be competing Greek futures battling for supremacy, each convinced that their vision represents civilization's best hope. None of them realize that their mutual destruction will leave Greece vulnerable to a kingdom they currently consider barely Greek. Macedon watches, learns, waits. But first, the great cities must exhaust themselves. First, the visions must collide. First, Athens must discover that empire and democracy might be incompatible, that glory and gold cannot sustain themselves without the power to compel obedience. That reckoning begins in 431 BC, when Thebes attacks Plataea and the Greek world fractures into decades of war. The Thucydidean trap, the Peloponnesian War, begins. Thucydides, son of Olorus, begins his history with a bold claim: this war will surpass all previous conflicts in magnitude and importance. He's correct, though not for the reasons he expects. The war destroys the Golden Age. It bankrupts treasuries, depopulates cities, corrupts democracies, breaks alliances. It proves that military brilliance, naval supremacy, and democratic virtue cannot prevent catastrophic miscalculation. Thucydides himself fights in the war as an Athenian general, fails at a crucial moment, gets exiled for 20 years. He uses that time to investigate what went wrong. His conclusion? War became inevitable when a rising power threatened an established one. Athens grew stronger. Sparta grew afraid. Fear drove decisions more than rationality. This pattern will repeat throughout history. Historians will call it the Thucydidean trap, though he never used that phrase. Rising power creates fear. Fear creates defensive aggression. Defensive aggression creates actual conflict. The immediate trigger hardly matters. Thebes attacks Plataea on a spring night in 431 BC. Plataea is Athens' ally, surrounded by hostile Boeotian territory, a democratic island in an oligarchic sea. The attack fails. Plataea captures the Theban raiders. Athens demands Sparta condemn Thebes. Sparta refuses. The formal declarations of war follow predictable patterns: ambassadors trading ultimatums, grievances aired, diplomatic solutions rejected by both sides. But Thucydides digs deeper. The Megarian decree, the conflict over Corcyra, the Theban raid on Plataea, these are just excuses. The real cause? Spartan fear of Athenian power. Sparta leads the Peloponnesian League, which includes most of the peninsula: Corinth, Megara, Elis, others. They have perhaps 30,000 hoplites available. These men train constantly, fight in disciplined phalanxes, dominate land warfare. Athens has perhaps 13,000 hoplites, less than half Sparta's number. But Athens has 200 triremes, the largest navy ever assembled by a Greek city. The empire contributes another 100 ships. Athens controls the sea absolutely. Pericles understands the strategic mismatch. He proposes a plan that sounds cowardly but makes perfect sense. Athens will abandon the Attic countryside, withdraw behind the long walls connecting the city to Piraeus harbor. The Spartans can march north, burn farms, destroy crops. It won't matter. Athens imports grain from the Black Sea, transported by the fleet Sparta cannot match. Meanwhile, Athenian ships will raid the Peloponnesian coast. They'll land troops, attack undefended towns, withdraw before Spartan armies respond. The raids won't conquer territory, but they'll damage Spartan prestige, disrupt their economy, gradually erode morale. Eventually, Sparta will recognize they cannot win. They'll accept peace on Athenian terms. The empire will survive. Democracy will triumph. The plan requires discipline. Athenians must watch their farms burn without responding. Farmers must accept losing olive groves their grandfathers planted. The citizen body must trust that Pericles knows what he's doing. They try. When the Spartans invade in summer 431, cutting down crops and fruit trees, Athenians stay behind their walls. The entire rural population crowds into the city. Every available space fills with refugees. Tension builds. Pericles gives his famous funeral oration that winter, praising the Athenian way of life, democracy, cultural achievement, imperial destiny. He's preparing people for a long struggle, reminding them what they're defending. Then the plague arrives in 430 BC. Nobody knows what disease it was. The symptoms Thucydides describes don't match any modern illness exactly. High fever, inflammation, convulsions, terrible thirst, skin lesions. People die within days. Doctors cannot help. They often die first from exposure. The crowded conditions make everything worse. Refugees packed in temporary shelters spread the disease rapidly. Bodies pile up faster than survivors can dispose of them. Traditional funeral rites get abandoned. Social order frays. Perhaps a third of Athens' population dies. The exact number remains uncertain, but the impact devastates the city. The fleet loses thousands of trained rowers. The hoplite ranks thin. Most catastrophically, the plague destroys confidence in Periclean strategy. If we're staying behind walls to avoid Spartan hoplites, why are we dying anyway? The gods seem to punish Athens for abandoning the countryside. Traditional piety demands defending sacred sites, not cowering behind fortifications. Pericles faces prosecution for embezzlement, gets fined, loses his strategic command. The plague doesn't care about political setbacks. It takes Pericles in 429 BC, along with his sons from his first marriage. Leadership passes to lesser men. Cleon, a successful tanner, rises to prominence through aggressive rhetoric. He advocates striking back at Sparta, abandoning defensive strategy, making the enemy hurt. His speeches appeal to anger and frustration more than careful calculation. The war settles into a pattern of raid and counter-raid. Sparta invades Attica most summers. Athens raids the Peloponnesian coast. Neither side achieves decisive victory. Both sides bleed resources, money, men. Morale. In 4428 BC, Mytilene on Lesbos revolts, seeking to leave the Athenian Empire. They represent one of the few allied cities still contributing ships rather than tribute. Their rebellion stings particularly because they're oligarchs overthrowing democratic government that Athens installed. Athens besieges Mytilene, eventually forcing surrender in 427 BC. The assembly debates punishment. Cleon proposes executing all adult males, enslaving all women and children. The assembly votes approval. A ship departs carrying the orders. Overnight, people reconsider. Executing allies sends a message, but does it serve long-term interests? If rebellion means certain death, won't that just encourage desperate resistance everywhere? Another assembly convenes the next day. Diodotus argues for mercy based on pure pragmatism. He doesn't claim the Mytileneans deserve forgiveness. He argues that harsh punishment makes future rebellions more dangerous. Better to kill only the ringleaders, show that surrender brings leniency. The vote is close. Mercy wins narrowly. A second ship races the first, arriving just in time. The Athenians execute about 1,000 men, the oligarchic leaders. They confiscate Mytilenean land, settle Athenian clerics. This episode reveals the war's corrosive effect on Athenian democracy. The initial vote for mass execution came from the same assembly that Pericles praised as civilized and humane. Fear and frustration pushed citizens toward atrocity. Only reconsideration prevented it. But reversal required another debate, another vote, another day's delay. How many times can democracy reconsider before paralysis sets in? How many times can it vote for mercy before allies assume Athens lacks the will to punish rebellion? Sparta faces its own challenges. Their strategy of invading Attica achieves nothing. They burn crops. Athenians import more grain. They demonstrate military superiority. Athenians stay behind walls. The raids cost money that Sparta doesn't have. Unlike Athens, they lack an empire to tax. In 425 BC, Athens establishes a fort at Pylos on the Spartan coast. A Spartan force lands on the nearby island of Sphacteria to prevent the fort's use. Athenian ships arrive, trap the Spartans on the island. After weeks of siege, 120 Spartan citizens surrender rather than die fighting. This shocks everyone. Spartans don't surrender. They fight to the end. The mythology says so. The 300 at Thermopylae died rather than yield. Spartan mothers tell sons to return with their shields or on them, but practical Spartans on Sphacteria choose life over death. The prisoners give Athens leverage. Sparta cannot continue aggressive operations while Athens holds Spartan citizens hostage. Peace negotiations begin. Both sides want to stop. Both sides also want terms the other cannot accept. Sparta offers peace if Athens releases the prisoners. Athens demands recognition of the empire, return of territories, Spartan abandonment of its allies. The talks collapse. The war continues. Years blend together in escalating brutality and diminishing returns. The bright hope of 431 BC, the confidence that superior strategy would bring quick victory, dies slowly in a grinding stalemate. Thucydides watches, records, analyzes. He sees clearly what participants cannot. This war will have no winners. It will exhaust both sides, corrupt their values, destroy their power. When it ends, Greece will lie prostrate before new threats. But ending the war requires admitting that the ideologies, ambitions, and fears that started it were mistakes. Neither Athens nor Sparta can admit that, so they continue fighting, continue dying, continue destroying the civilization they claim to defend. The trap has closed. Fear drove them into war. Pride keeps them fighting. Exhaustion lies somewhere ahead, but first, both sides must learn exactly how terrible war can become when fought between peoples who share language, culture, gods. The Greeks are about to demonstrate that fraternal conflicts are the most vicious. They'll prove that democracy does not prevent atrocity. They'll show that military excellence cannot substitute for strategic wisdom, and they'll do it in ways Pericles never imagined when he confidently outlined his plan for victory. The Golden Age is over. The Age of Blood has begun, a war of horrors, from Mytilene to Melos stasis. Civil war. Greeks have a word for it because the phenomenon plagues their world. Thucydides describes what happens when stasis tears a city apart. The customary meanings of words change. Reckless audacity becomes courage. Prudent hesitation becomes cowardice. Moderation masks weakness. Extreme violence proves loyalty. Every city splits into democratic and oligarchic factions. Each side seeks help from either Athens or Sparta. The Great War fuels local conflicts. Local conflicts justify the Great War. Corcyra experiences this horror in 427 BC. Democratic and oligarchic factions clash. Bodies pile in the streets. People seek sanctuary in temples. They're dragged out, executed. Family members denounce each other. Ancient friendships dissolve in paranoia. The Democrats win temporarily, helped by Athenian ships. They proceed to hunt down oligarchs throughout the island. Some oligarchs surrender. Promises of fair trials prove worthless. Executions follow. Others flee to temples, committing suicide rather than face capture. Thucydides writes that during the Corcyra stasis, people abandoned even basic honesty. Treaties meant nothing. Oaths became tools for temporary advantage. Trust disappeared. The state's collapse made personal survival the only rational goal. This pattern repeats across Greece. The war doesn't just pit Athens against Sparta. It fractures every city internally, releasing hatreds that peacetime laws constrained. Meanwhile, the military campaigns continue grinding forward. In 424 BC, Athens attempts an ambitious assault on Boeotia. The plan involves multiple coordinated attacks, timed to overwhelm Theban defenses. It requires precision, good intelligence, perfect execution. The operation fails completely. Different Athenian forces attack at wrong times. The Boeotians concentrate their army at Delium and smash the Athenian hoplites in pitched battle. The Athenian general Hippocrates falls during the fighting. The philosopher Socrates reportedly fights in the retreat, maintaining discipline while others panic. The defeat at Delium costs Athens perhaps 1,000 hoplites. More importantly, it demonstrates that Athenian land forces cannot match Theban phalanxes. Athens must rely entirely on naval supremacy. Any strategy requiring hoplite combat on equal terms courts disaster. Brasidas, a Spartan commander, sees opportunity in northern Greece. The region contains Athenian allies and silver mines that fund the war effort. If he can flip those cities to Sparta's side, he'll cripple Athenian finances while opening a second front far from the Peloponnese. He marches north with a small force, mostly Helots promised freedom in exchange for military service. Brasidas proves to be a brilliant commander and skilled diplomat. He promises cities' liberation from Athenian tyranny. He guarantees local autonomy. He fights only when necessary, preferring to win through negotiation. Amphipolis, a crucial Athenian colony controlling access to Thracian resources, surrenders to Brasidas in 424 BC. The Athenian general responsible for defending it? Thucydides, the historian. He arrives too late with his relief force. The city's already lost. Athens exiles Thucydides for this failure. It's probably unfair. Amphipolis was poorly garrisoned, the citizens inclined towards Sparta anyway. Brasidas' advance faster than anyone anticipated. But democracies demand accountability. Generals who lose cities get punished. The exile gives Thucydides time to write. His history benefits from his personal disaster. He interviews people from both sides, travels freely, investigates motives and decisions. The work becomes the first rigorously analytical military history, prioritizing evidence over mythology. The fighting escalates in intensity and brutality. Neither side can achieve knockout victory, so both pursue attrition. Kill enough enemy soldiers, burn enough enemy farms, disrupt enough enemy trade. Eventually, the other side collapses. In 422 BC, Cleon leads an Athenian force north to retake Amphipolis. Brasidas defends the city. The battle goes badly for Athens. Both Cleon and Brasidas die during the fighting. Their deaths remove the war's most aggressive advocates from both sides. Peace negotiations finally gain traction. Neither Athens nor Sparta has won. Both have suffered terribly. The treasury strains under constant military expenses. The population tires of annual invasions, constant alerts, never-ending funerals. The Peace of Nicias in 421 BC establishes a 50-year truce. Terms require Athens and Sparta to return conquests, exchange prisoners, respect each other's alliances. Both sides swear oaths before the gods to maintain the peace. The peace lasts about 6 years before open warfare resumes. But it's hollow from the start. Corinth refuses to accept the terms, feeling betrayed by Sparta's negotiations. Several key cities refuse to return to Athenian control. The prisoners get exchanged, but tensions remain. Athens struggles internally about how to proceed. Nicias, the peace's architect, leads the conservative faction wanting to preserve the agreement. Alcibiades, young, brilliant, ambitious, advocates aggressive expansion. Alcibiades is Pericles' ward, the disc from one of Athens' most prominent families. He's wealthy, talented, scandalous. He keeps horses for chariot racing, wins multiple Olympic victories, flaunts convention. He seduces other men's wives, mocks religious ceremonies, speaks brilliantly in assembly. He's also strategically insightful. Alcibiades recognizes that the Peace of Nicias merely postpones Sparta's inevitable challenge to Athenian power. Better to strike now, expand the empire, force Sparta into isolation. He engineers an alliance between Athens and Argos, Sparta's traditional rival in the Peloponnese. The plan? Threaten Sparta on its own territory, force them to fight defensively, gradually erode their alliance system. Sparta responds by marching into Argos in 418 BC. The Battle of Mantinea follows, the largest hoplite engagement of the war. Sparta wins decisively. Their phalanx proves superior despite Athenian support for Argos. The victory restores Spartan military prestige damaged at Sphacteria. It also demonstrates that Athens cannot protect allies against Spartan land power. The empire's credibility rests on naval supremacy. In land battles, Sparta remains dominant. Alcibiades' strategy collapses, but he retains political influence through sheer charisma and rhetorical skill. He needs a new plan, something dramatic enough to restore his reputation and advance Athens' interests. He proposes invading Sicily. The island is wealthy, divided, far enough from Sparta to be vulnerable. Syracuse, the largest city, has been interfering with Athenian allies. Conquering Sicily would add immense resources to the empire, isolate Sparta, potentially fund further expansion to Carthage and beyond. The assembly debates the proposal in 415 BC. Nicias opposes the plan, arguing it's too ambitious, too risky, too distant from Athenian interests. Athens should consolidate existing holdings, not gamble on distant conquests. Alcibiades argues the opposite. Athens must expand or die. Standing still means Sparta grows stronger. The empire requires constant demonstration of power. Sicily offers glory, wealth, security. Before the invasion launches, something bizarre happens. Someone mutilates the Hermes, sacred statues of Hermes, throughout Athens. They smash the faces, break off the phalluses. It's sacrilege. Possibly a conspiracy, certainly ominous. Suspicion falls on Alcibiades. He's notorious for mocking religion. The investigation expands. Witnesses claim Alcibiades and friends performed profane parodies of sacred mysteries while drunk. Alcibiades demands an immediate trial before the fleet departs. If he's guilty, execute him. If innocent, let him command without clouds of suspicion. The assembly refuses. The invasion is too important to delay. They'll investigate after victory. The fleet sails in summer 415 BC, 134 triremes, thousands of hoplites, tons of supplies. It's the largest expedition Athens ever mounted. Ships fill the harbor at Piraeus. Crowds gather to watch. The departure feels like a festival. Thucydides writes that all of Athens participated, spectators and participants equally moved by ambition, confidence, hope. They're sailing toward absolute disaster. The Sicilian expedition will destroy the Athenian Empire more thoroughly than any Spartan invasion. It will validate Nicias's pessimism and exceed his worst fears. But on that summer day in 415 BC, with the ships streaming out of harbor, with crowds cheering, with Alcibiades confident and Nicias resigned, nobody knows the catastrophe approaching. They're about to learn that hubris has consequences, that distant wars drain resources faster than expected, that political rivalries undermine military operations, that democracies cannot adapt quickly enough when strategies fail. The horror is just beginning. Mytilene and Melos demonstrated what Athens would do to rebellious allies. Sicily will demonstrate what overreach costs when fortune turns. The Sicilian expedition, folly and disaster. The Athenian fleet approaches Sicily in late summer 415 BC, 134 triremes, 5,000 hoplites, perhaps 30,000 total men, counting rowers and support personnel. The largest amphibious operation Greece has ever attempted. The commanders immediately start arguing. Alcibiades wants to sail directly to Syracuse, strike before they prepare defenses. Nicias urges caution, reconnaissance, building alliances with other Sicilian cities first. Lamachus, the third general, sides with Alcibiades but gets outvoted. They waste weeks accomplishing nothing. Syracusan spies observe the fleet, report its size, laugh at Athenian indecision. Then a ship arrives from Athens. Alcibiades is recalled to stand trial for the Herm mutilations and impiety charges. The investigation has continued during his absence. New witnesses have emerged. The assembly demands his return. Alcibiades boards the ship heading home. Halfway there, he escapes at an Italian port, fleeing to Sparta. He's not stupid. The trial is predetermined. Political enemies have orchestrated his prosecution. He'll face exile at best, execution at worst. Better to defect than face Athenian justice. In Sparta, Alcibiades provides military intelligence. He explains Athenian strategy, reveals weaknesses, suggests countermeasures. He tells the Spartans exactly how to defeat the invasion he planned. This is treason of the highest order, but Alcibiades rationalizes it easily. Athens betrayed him first. They turned his expedition into a political persecution. They denied him the trial he demanded. Why should he remain loyal to a city that abandoned him? The logic is convenient, self-serving, and completely characteristic. Alcibiades always prioritizes Alcibiades. Back in Sicily, Nicias now commands with Lamachus. They besiege Syracuse half-heartedly. The city is massive, well-fortified, wealthy. Athens has insufficient forces to surround it completely. The siege becomes a blockade. Athenians build walls, attempting to cut Syracuse off from its hinterland. Syracusans build counterwalls to maintain access. Winter arrives. Nothing decisive happens. In spring 414 BC, Spartan reinforcements reach Syracuse under Gylippus, a competent commander who immediately transforms the situation. He rallies Syracusan morale, organizes counterattacks, breaks sections of Athenian siege works. The tables turn slowly. Athens besieges Syracuse. Syracuse besieges the Athenians, besieging them. The distinction becomes unclear. Nicias sends desperate messages to Athens. The expedition needs massive reinforcements or permission to withdraw. We're trapped in an open-ended commitment without resources to win or safely disengage. Athens votes to send more ships, more men. They've already invested so much. Abandoning the expedition means admitting the entire strategy failed. The democracy cannot accept that admission. Demosthenes arrives in 413 BC, commanding 73 triremes and thousands more hoplites. He immediately assesses the situation as catastrophic. The Athenian position is untenable. The army occupies low-lying ground exposed to disease. Syracuse controls the high ground. The Syracusan navy has grown stronger through Corinthian reinforcements. Demosthenes proposes immediate withdrawal. Get the army out before it's too late. Nicias refuses. He fears the political consequences of retreat. Better to keep fighting, hope for some success that justifies the expedition. The delay proves fatal. Syracuse launches a naval attack in the Great Harbor where the Athenian fleet anchors. Fighting in the confined space negates Athenian advantages in seamanship. Syracuse has modified their ships with reinforced bows. They ram Athenian triremes head-on, a crude tactic that works in close quarters. The Athenian fleet suffers severe losses. Now the Navy cannot guarantee safe evacuation even if Nicias finally agrees to retreat. The land army tries to escape overland, 40,000 men wounded, exhausted, demoralized, marching through hostile territory. Syracusan cavalry harass them constantly. The retreat becomes a nightmare. Drinking water runs low. Men break ranks to drink from rivers. Syracusan soldiers wait, massacre those who separate from the main body. The army splits. Demosthenes' division gets surrounded, forced to surrender. Nicias continues with the remaining forces, perhaps 20,000 men. They march for one more day before they too get trapped. Nicias surrenders on promises of mercy for his men. The promises mean nothing. The Syracusans and their allies execute the generals, including Nicias and Demosthenes. The soldiers get marched to quarries outside Syracuse, stone pits that become open-air prisons. No shelter, minimal food, brutal conditions. Thousands die from exposure and disease. Survivors get sold into slavery. A few escape by reciting passages from Euripides. Apparently, some Syracusans love Greek tragedy enough to free Athenians who can perform verses from memory. It's a strange footnote to an otherwise complete catastrophe. The losses are staggering: 40,000 men, 200 ships, uncountable wealth. More importantly, Athens loses prestige, momentum, hope. The empire that seemed invincible has been humiliated by a Sicilian city. Thucydides writes that this was the greatest action of the war, indeed in Greek history. The victor's triumph proved most glorious. The vanquished suffered complete destruction. They were utterly defeated in every way. Their suffering was absolute. As the saying goes, they lost everything: ships, army, everything. Few from many returned home. The disaster validates every warning Nicias gave. Distant wars consume resources unpredictably. Divided command guarantees failure. Ambition unchecked by prudence leads to catastrophe. Democracy's greatest weakness is its inability to admit mistakes until too late. But the disaster also reveals Athens' terrifying resilience. Most states would collapse after losing an entire expedition. Athens survives. They tap emergency reserves, 6,000 talents accumulated over decades. They build a new fleet. They recall Alcibiades from exile, needing his brilliance despite his treason. The war continues for another 9 years. Athens keeps fighting, but something fundamental has broken. The confidence that supported Pericles' strategy, the belief that Athens could out-resource and outlast anyone, dies in the Sicilian quarries. Sparta gains new advantages. Persia provides funding for a Spartan navy, seeing opportunity to weaken both Greek powers. Athenian allies revolt, sensing empire vulnerability. The war that seemed a stalemate becomes a slow Athenian collapse. Yet Athens fights on. The democracy, for all its flaws, proves remarkably stubborn. Citizens vote to continue resistance even when surrender might bring better terms. They execute generals who fail, then send new generals to face the same impossible tasks. The Sicilian expedition demonstrates democracy's greatest strengths and fatal weaknesses operating simultaneously. The people vote freely to pursue disaster. They debate openly about their mistakes. They hold leaders accountable for failures. But accountability doesn't prevent those failures. Free debate doesn't guarantee wise decisions. Transparency about mistakes doesn't undo their consequences. Syracuse defeats Athens not through superior strategy, but through patient defense, clever use of geography, and willingness to accept Spartan help. They prove that democratic Athens, despite its wealth and power, can be beaten by determined resistance. The lesson matters because it will repeat. Great powers overreach. They commit to distant wars expecting quick victory. They reinforce failure rather than admit error. They sacrifice armies pursuing ambitions that don't justify the costs. Athens in Sicily becomes a template for democratic overreach. The mechanisms that should prevent disaster, debate, accountability, free speech, instead legitimize the catastrophic decision. Everyone shares responsibility. Nobody can stop it. The ships sail, the men march, the quarries fill with corpses. Democracy authorizes it all through proper voting procedures. And when the survivors return to Athens, the democracy doesn't collapse into tyranny or surrender to Sparta. It keeps fighting. The resilience proves as remarkable as the initial folly. Perhaps that's the real horror. Not that democracies make mistakes, but that they can survive those mistakes well enough to make new ones. The learning curve proves extremely expensive. Sicily teaches Athens about hubris, but the lesson takes 9 more years of war, countless more deaths, and eventual defeat to fully sink in. The age of Pericles is truly over now. The age of survival begins. The fall of Athens, Lysander, and the long walls. The treasury is empty. The silver from Laurion runs thin. The empire frays at its edges. After Sicily, Athens somehow continues. They scrape together crews from unlikely sources: freedmen, metics, foreign residents, even slaves promised liberation if they row well. The new fleet lacks the skill of the pre-Sicily navy, but it floats. Persia enters the conflict decisively in 411 BC. Darius II sees opportunity in Greek weakness. He funds Sparta's naval construction through satraps in Asia Minor. The money comes with one condition: Sparta must abandon the Ionian Greeks to Persian control. Sparta accepts. They'll betray fellow Greeks to defeat Athens. The irony stings. Sparta claimed to be liberating Greece from Athenian tyranny. Now they're selling Greeks to Persia for tactical advantage. The Persian gold changes everything. Sparta can finally build a fleet to challenge Athenian naval supremacy. They recruit rowers from across the Peloponnese, hire experienced sailors, commission ship construction. Athens faces catastrophe on multiple fronts. The empire revolts in stages. Chios, Miletus, Ephesus, city after city declares independence. The tribute that funded Athenian power stops flowing. Without money, Athens cannot pay rowers. Without rowers, ships sit idle. Without ships, the empire cannot be maintained. Internal politics collapse into chaos. Oligarchs attempt a coup in 411 BC, establishing the Council of 400. They promise more effective war leadership, claiming democracy has failed. The navy refuses to accept the change. Democracy gets restored, but trust in institutions has shattered. Alcibiades returns from exile, plays different factions against each other, briefly commands the fleet again. He wins some victories, recaptures some cities, reminds Athens why they valued him despite his betrayals. Then he loses crucial battles, gets blamed for defeats that weren't entirely his fault, goes into exile again. The pattern is exhausting. Athens cycles through commanders, strategies, political systems. Nothing works for long. The fundamental problem remains. They're fighting a war they cannot afford against an enemy funded by Persia. Lysander emerges as Sparta's most effective naval commander. Unlike most Spartans, he understands diplomacy, deception, and naval warfare. He cultivates personal relationships with Persian officials, securing reliable funding. He treats allies well, gaining their loyalty. He's ruthless when necessary, merciful when advantageous. Most importantly, Lysander recognizes that naval warfare differs fundamentally from hoplite combat. On land, Spartan training and discipline dominate. At sea, tactics, timing, and resource management matter more. He studies Athenian methods, identifies weaknesses, develops counter-strategies. In 406 BC, Athens wins a significant victory at Arginusae. They defeat the Spartan fleet, though at heavy cost. The battle occurs during a storm. After victory, the Athenian commanders fail to recover bodies of sailors who drowned. Athens tries all the generals involved. The assembly votes to execute 6 of them, including Pericles' son from his relationship with Aspasia. The trial is legally questionable, probably unjust, definitely stupid. Athens is executing its successful generals for failing to recover bodies during a storm. The executions demonstrate how desperate and irrational Athens has become. Fear, grief, and frustration override judgment. The democracy punishes victory because it wasn't perfect victory. Lysander rebuilds the Spartan fleet with Persian funding. In 405 BC, he positions his ships at Aegospotami on the Hellespont. The location is strategic. Athens depends on grain imports from the Black Sea. Ships must pass through the Hellespont. Control it, and you starve Athens. The Athenian fleet arrives, camps on the opposite shore. Every day for 4 days, they row out and offer battle. Lysander refuses engagement. His ships stay beached. The Athenians return to shore, beach their ships, disperse to find food. Alcibiades, watching from a nearby estate, warns the Athenian commanders they're vulnerable. They ignore him. He's discredited, exiled, irrelevant. On the 5th day, the pattern repeats. Athenians offer battle, Spartans ignore them. Athenians return to shore. They beach their ships. The crews scatter. Lysander attacks. The Athenian fleet is caught completely unprepared. Ships still beached, crews dispersed, no organization possible. The Spartans capture 170 triremes without serious resistance. Only a handful of Athenian ships escape, racing toward Athens with terrible news. Lysander executes 3,000 Athenian prisoners. The scale is unusual. Naval battles typically don't end in mass executions. But Lysander wants to send a message. Athens' naval supremacy is finished. Resistance is pointless. The ship Perilos arrives in Athens at night. The news spreads from Piraeus through the long walls into the city. Xenophon, who writes a continuation of Thucydides' history, describes people wailing through the night. They mourn their dead. They also mourn their future. Everyone knows what comes next. Lysander sails toward Athens, blockading Piraeus. The Spartan king Pausanias marches north with a land army, completing the siege. Food supplies dwindle quickly. Athens has no fleet to import grain. The reserves accumulated after Sicily are long exhausted. Starvation becomes real. Theramenes negotiates surrender terms. Sparta's allies, especially Corinth and Thebes, demand Athens be destroyed completely. Raze the city, sell the population, end the Athenian threat forever. Sparta refuses. Lysander and the Spartan leadership make a calculated decision. Destroying Athens would create a power vacuum that Thebes might fill. Better to keep Athens weak but intact, a counterweight to other potential threats. The peace terms are harsh, but not genocidal. Athens must demolish the long walls. The fleet gets reduced to 12 ships. Athens must recall all exiles, accept Spartan foreign policy leadership, and abandon the empire completely. The walls come down in spring 404 BC. Workers demolish the fortifications that represented Athenian security since Pericles. Spartans play flute music during the destruction, as if celebrating a festival. For Sparta, it is a celebration. They've won. The demolition takes months. The long walls stretched 6 kilometers, massive stone construction. Tearing them down requires intense labor. Athenians must perform this work themselves, destroying the infrastructure that protected them. Lysander installs an oligarchic government, the 30 tyrants, led by Critias. They're not technically tyrants, by Greek definition. They're an oligarchic council. But they rule tyrannically, executing democratic leaders, confiscating property, employing Spartan troops to maintain control. The democracy Athens defended through decades of war vanishes almost immediately after defeat. The victorious Spartans imposed the political system Athens spent 70 years resisting. The irony is brutal. Athens fought to preserve democracy and empire. They lost both in the same surrender. The Golden Age, the Periclean vision, the democratic ideal all collapse into foreign occupation and oligarchic rule. But democracy proves resilient. Within a year, democratic exiles led by Thrasybulus seize Piraeus, fight a brief civil war, restore democratic government. Sparta surprisingly permits this. The oligarchs were too brutal, too unstable. Democracy at least provides predictable governance. So Athens survives, but transformed. The city that commanded 200 ships now operates 12. The empire that collected hundreds of talents in tribute now pays tribute to Sparta. The democracy that inspired fear and admiration now exists at Spartan sufferance. The Peloponnesian War is over. It accomplished almost nothing positive. Sparta achieved hegemony but lacks the resources or vision to maintain it. Athens is defeated but not destroyed. The other Greek cities are exhausted, depleted, disillusioned. Thucydides, still in exile, continues writing his history. He doesn't complete it before dying. The work breaks off mid-sentence in 411 BC, 7 years before the final defeat. Perhaps he couldn't bear to finish. Perhaps he died before he could. Perhaps the ending was too obvious to require recording. Athens fell because they overreached in Sicily, exhausted their resources, faced an enemy funded by Persia. Democracy allowed all the mistakes but couldn't prevent their consequences. Sparta won because they accepted Persian gold, betrayed their principles, and employed a brilliant commander at the crucial moment. Victory leaves them dominant but morally compromised. The real winner is Persia. They funded both sides at various points, weakened both powers, prepared the ground for renewed expansion into Greece. The war's greatest casualty is Greek unity. The idea that Greeks share common interests against barbarian outsiders dies in the stasis, the betrayals, the decades of Greeks killing Greeks over ideology and ambition. A new era begins, but it's not one Pericles would recognize. The classical age of the independent polis reaches its end. The cities survive, but as shadows of their former strength. The next great power in Greece won't come from Athens, Sparta, or Thebes. It will come from the north, from a kingdom Greeks consider barely civilized. But first, Greek cities must exhaust themselves in one more round of futile conflicts, proving they learned nothing from the Peloponnesian War's horrors. The age of the polis is dying. Nobody has noticed yet. The struggle for hegemony, Sparta, Thebes, and a worn-out Greece. Spartan hoplites garrison the Acropolis. They occupy cities throughout Greece. Sparta has won. Victory proves hollow almost immediately. Sparta knows how to conquer. They don't know how to govern. Their entire society is organized around military discipline, maintaining control over helots and preserving a narrow oligarchic system. Extending that model across Greece requires resources and administrative capacity Sparta lacks. Lysander attempts to establish control through narrow oligarchies loyal to him personally. He installs dikarchies, 10-man governments in cities Athens previously controlled. These governments rely on Spartan military support and quickly become despised. The system collapses within years. Sparta cannot garrison every city. They cannot fund permanent occupation. They cannot even maintain their own fleet without Persian subsidies, and Persia's interests don't align with Spartan hegemony indefinitely. In Athens, the 30 tyrants rule viciously. Critias, their leader, is a fascinating figure. He studied with Socrates, wrote poetry and philosophy, advocated for oligarchy based on intellectual grounds. Power transforms his philosophy into bloodshed. The 30 execute 1,500 Athenian citizens in 8 months, confiscating property to enrich themselves and fund their Spartan garrison. Thrasybulus leads democratic exiles from Thebes, seizes Piraeus in 403 BC. Civil war erupts. The 30 request Spartan intervention. Sparta sends troops, but half-heartedly. Pausanias, the Spartan king, negotiates reconciliation instead of crushing the Democrats. The 30 fall. Democracy returns to Athens. Why does Sparta permit this? Partly, the oligarchs prove too extreme even for Spartan tastes. Partly, Pausanias and Lysander are rivals who pursue different strategies. Partly, Sparta realizes that controlling Athens requires more effort than it's worth. Athens in 400 BC bears little resemblance to Periclean glory. The population has declined, the walls remain demolished, the fleet consists of a handful of ships, the empire is gone, but the democracy survives, the assembly meets, the courts function. Sparta faces a different problem in Asia Minor. Cyrus the Younger, a Persian prince, rebels against his brother Artaxerxes II. Cyrus hires Greek mercenaries, 10,000 hoplites who march deep into Persia expecting easy victory and generous pay. Cyrus dies in battle. The Greeks find themselves stranded deep in hostile territory. Their march back, the Anabasis, becomes legendary. Xenophon, an Athenian who participates, writes an account. The 10,000 fight their way through mountains and hostile tribes, eventually reaching the Black Sea coast. Thalata! Thalata, they cry. The sea! Safety! The episode demonstrates that Greek hoplites can defeat Persian infantry consistently. It also demonstrates that Persia remains dangerous, that Greek mercenaries are now for hire, that traditional loyalties have dissolved into financial transactions. Sparta's alliance with Persia frays. When Persia demands Sparta abandon Ionian Greeks, Sparta initially complies. But King Agesilaus II decides to campaign in Asia Minor, partly for glory, partly to relieve domestic pressure from landless Spartans, partly because Persia's weakness is tempting. This creates exactly the situation Persia wants to avoid. They respond by funding Sparta's Greek rivals. Persian gold flows to Athens, Thebes, Corinth, Argos. The Corinthian War begins in 395 BC. The pattern is repeating. Persia manipulates Greek conflicts, ensuring no single Greek power dominates. It's strategic brilliance. Why invade Greece directly when you can pay Greeks to fight each other? Athens rebuilds its navy with Persian money. The irony is extraordinary. Athens fought to preserve Greek freedom from Persia. Now they accept Persian funding to fight Sparta, who claim to liberate Greece from Athens. Everyone is compromised. Nobody occupies moral high ground. Sparta wins the land battles. At Chaeronea in 394 BC, Agesilaus defeats a coalition army. Spartan discipline proves superior again, but Sparta loses at sea. The Athenian Conon, commanding a Persian-funded fleet, defeats Sparta at Cnidus. The Corinthian War grinds on for years, achieving nothing decisive. Eventually, Sparta makes peace with Persia through the King's Peace in 386 BC. The terms are humiliating for all Greeks. Persia gets Ionia and Cyprus. Greek cities in Asia Minor return to Persian control. Sparta guarantees the arrangement in exchange for Persian recognition of Spartan hegemony in Greece proper. This is the same bargain Sparta rejected Athens for accepting. Pericles claimed Athens would protect Greek cities. Sparta claimed this was tyranny. Now Sparta explicitly sells those cities to Persia for political advantage. Greek unity, already fragile, shatters completely. Every city recognizes that the great powers will betray anyone for temporary gain. Alliances become purely transactional. Trust disappears. Sparta uses its Persian-backed hegemony to interfere constantly in other cities' affairs. They support oligarchies, suppress democracies, garrison strategic points. They dissolve the Boeotian League in 386 BC, reducing Thebes to a single city without allies. Thebes responds with a conspiracy. In 379 BC, democratic exiles infiltrate the city, assassinate the oligarchic leaders and the Spartan commander, liberate Thebes from Spartan control. The revolt succeeds because Sparta has overextended. They cannot be everywhere. Under Epaminondas and Pelopidas, Thebes rebuilds the Boeotian League and develops new military tactics. Epaminondas recognizes that the traditional phalanx formation, with equal depth across the line, wastes force. He concentrates strength on one wing, 50 shields deep instead of 8 or 12. The deep column smashes through enemy formations at the point of contact. He also uses the sacred band, 300 elite warriors organized in paired lovers, as shock troops. The psychology works. Men fight desperately to protect their partners. At Leuctra in 371 BC, Epaminondas puts theory into practice. Sparta has 600 Spartiates, 4,000 total allies. Thebes has 6,000 Boeotians. The numbers favor Sparta slightly, but Spartan quality usually overcomes numerical disadvantages. Epaminondas loads his left wing with the best troops in deep column. The sacred band leads. They attack the Spartan right wing, where the Spartan king Cleombrotus commands with the Spartiate elite. The Theban column hits like a hammer. The depth and momentum of 50 ranks pushing forward overwhelms even Spartan discipline. The Spartiate line breaks. Cleombrotus falls. 400 Spartiates die in the battle. This is catastrophic for Sparta. They have perhaps 8,000 Spartiates total. Losing 400 in a single battle, including the king, represents an irreplaceable loss. Sparta's citizen population has been declining for generations. Constant warfare, earthquakes, Helot revolts, economic inequality all contribute to demographic collapse. Leuctra doesn't just defeat Sparta militarily, it breaks the myth of Spartan invincibility. For centuries, Sparta dominated land warfare. Now Thebes demonstrates that innovative tactics can overcome traditional Spartan strengths. Epaminondas follows up by invading the Peloponnese in 370 BC. He marches into Laconia itself, territory Sparta has controlled for centuries. He liberates Messenia, freeing the Helots who grow Sparta's food. Without Messenian agriculture, the Spartan economic system collapses. This is strategic genius. Epaminondas doesn't just defeat Sparta's army. He destroys the foundation of Spartan society, free the Helots, and Sparta cannot maintain its citizen-soldier system. The Spartiates must farm their own land or starve. Either way, they cannot train for war full-time. Thebes achieves hegemony. For almost a decade, they dominate Greek affairs. But Theban power rests on two brilliant generals. When Epaminondas dies at the Battle of Mantinea in 362 BC, ironically a Theban victory, Theban hegemony dies with him. The Battle of Mantinea in 362 BC involves nearly every Greek city. Sparta, Athens, and various allies fight against Thebes and its coalition. The battle is large, chaotic, and indecisive despite Theban victory. Epaminondas' death means his tactical innovations die with him. Xenophon, who writes the history of this period, concludes that the Battle of Mantinea resolved nothing. Confusion reigned more after than before. Nobody won. Everyone lost. Greece exhausted itself through constant warfare without achieving stability. This assessment captures 4th century Greece perfectly. Sparta, Athens, and Thebes each achieve brief hegemony. Each fails to maintain it. Each victory creates new resentments that fuel new conflicts. The classical age is dying from exhaustion. The polis system, which produced Marathon, Salamis, the Parthenon, democracy, tragedy, philosophy, all of it, cannot solve the fundamental problem. Greek cities share culture but cannot cooperate politically. They fight constantly over local disputes elevated into existential conflicts. The future belongs to whoever can unify Greece or conquer it. That won't be Athens, glorious but defeated. It won't be Sparta, victorious but depleted. It won't be Thebes, briefly brilliant but dependent on individual genius. The future belongs to Macedon, a kingdom most Greeks consider barbarian. They're wrong to dismiss Macedon. Philip II is building a new kind of power: professional army, centralized monarchy, diplomatic cunning, military innovation. He's been watching Greek cities destroy each other for decades. He's learning their tactics, exploiting their divisions, preparing his strike. But first, Athens needs to produce one more generation of thinkers who will question everything the city claims to believe. Before the polis dies politically, it will achieve its greatest intellectual achievements. The age of philosophy begins just as the age of the city-state ends. The philosopher kings, Socrates, Plato, and the search for truth. The agora fills with conversation. Men debate politics, purchase goods, exchange gossip. In the midst of commerce and civic life, one man asks questions. Socrates, son of a stonemason and a midwife, doesn't write books. He doesn't charge fees. He doesn't claim to teach anything. He simply asks questions, probing beliefs people hold without examination. What is justice? How do we define virtue? Can excellence be taught? What makes an action pious? The questions seem simple. The answers prove maddeningly elusive. Socrates develops a method later called elenchus, systematic questioning to expose contradictions in someone's beliefs. He approaches people who claim expertise, politicians who claim to know justice, generals who claim to know courage, priests who claim to know piety, and demonstrates through questions that they don't actually understand what they claim to know. The process is humiliating for the victims, entertaining for spectators, and philosophically revolutionary. Before Socrates, Greek thinkers primarily investigated nature. What is the cosmos made of? How do physical processes work? Socrates turns philosophy inward. What is a good life? How should we live? What do we actually know? He's ugly, according to all sources. Snub nose, bulging eyes, thick lips, pot belly. He walks barefoot, even in winter. He can stand motionless for hours, lost in thought. He fought at Delium and Amphipolis, showing physical courage despite his ungainly appearance. His wife, Xanthippe, reportedly has a difficult temperament. Ancient sources portray her as shrewish, though we only hear the male perspective. Living with Socrates, who spends his time questioning everyone rather than earning money, might test anyone's patience. Young aristocrats gather around Socrates, fascinated by his intellectual demolitions of conventional wisdom. Among them, Alcibiades, Critias, Plato. The first becomes Athens' most brilliant and treacherous general. The second leads the 30 tyrants. The third becomes the most influential philosopher in Western civilization. This association proves dangerous. Athens has lost the Peloponnesian War. The democracy, restored after the 30 tyrants' fall, is fragile and defensive. The two most notorious traitors in recent memory studied with Socrates. People make connections. In 399 BC, Socrates faces trial on charges of impiety and corrupting youth. The prosecution claims he doesn't believe in Athenian gods and teaches young men to disrespect traditional values. The charges are partly political. Socrates associated with oligarchs. He questioned democratic assumptions. He suggested that expertise matters more than popular opinion, that cobblers should make shoes and philosophers should govern, not whoever wins election through rhetoric. This implies democracy is flawed. After losing a catastrophic war, Athens isn't receptive to criticism of their political system. But the charges also contain substance. Socrates does question traditional religion. He claims to have a daimonion, an inner voice that warns him against wrong actions. He subordinates conventional piety to rational investigation. He asks, what is pious, and isn't satisfied with answers like, what pleases the gods? The trial occurs before a jury of 500 citizens. Socrates defends himself, refusing to beg for mercy or use emotional appeals. He claims that his philosophical questioning serves Athens by exposing false claims to knowledge. He compares himself to a gadfly, annoying but necessary to keep the city alert. The jury votes guilty by a narrow margin. Under Athenian law, the prosecution and defense each propose a penalty. The jury chooses between them. The prosecution demands death. Socrates, instead of proposing exile or a fine he could actually pay, suggests the city should feed him at public expense for his service as a philosopher. This is either principled courage or suicidal arrogance. The jury interprets it as mockery. They vote for death by an even larger margin than the guilty verdict. Socrates' friends arrange an escape. Crito visits him in prison, explains that everything is prepared. Socrates refuses. He's spent his life arguing that citizens must obey the laws. To flee now would invalidate everything he taught. The laws made him who he is, educated him, protected him, allowed him to philosophize. He won't betray them to save his life. The argument in the Crito dialogue, preserved by Plato, establishes principles of civil obligation that echo through centuries. Citizens consent to laws by choosing to remain in the city. That consent creates obligations. Breaking laws when convenient undermines the entire legal system. Socrates drinks hemlock in 399 BC, surrounded by friends. Plato is reportedly too distressed to attend. The poison paralyzes gradually, starting from the feet and moving upward. When it reaches his heart, Socrates dies. His final words, according to Plato, "Crito, we owe a cock to Asclepius. Pay the debt and don't forget." Asclepius is the god of healing. The phrase might mean Socrates views death as cure for life's illness, or it might be a mundane reminder about an actual sacrifice owed. We don't know. The execution traumatizes Plato. His teacher, the wisest man he knows, has been murdered by democratic Athens for pursuing truth. The democracy that supposedly represents justice and wisdom has killed the one person actually seeking those virtues. Plato spends decades responding to this catastrophe. He writes dialogues, philosophical dramas featuring Socrates as the main character. We cannot separate the historical Socrates from Plato's literary creation, but the dialogues preserve a philosophical method. Question assumptions, pursue definitions, accept no answer without rigorous examination. The middle dialogues develop Plato's own philosophy, probably going beyond anything Socrates actually taught. The theory of forms proposes that the physical world is just shadows of eternal, perfect forms. The form of justice, the form of beauty, the form of the good. These exist in a realm accessible to reason, but not to senses. This has radical implications. If truth exists beyond the physical world, then the skilled philosopher can access it through reason. But most people perceive only shadows, mistakes appearances for reality. Therefore, most people are fundamentally deceived about what matters most. Democracy assumes all citizens' opinions have equal weight. But if most people are deceived, shouldn't the wise few who perceive truth govern instead? Plato's Republic develops this argument into a complete political philosophy. The ideal state, according to Plato, has three classes corresponding to three parts of the soul. Guardians, philosopher kings, rule through wisdom. Auxiliaries, warriors, protect through courage. Producers, farmers, craftsmen, provide material needs through moderation. Each class performs its proper function. Justice means everyone doing their appropriate role without interfering in others. The guardians own no property, share partners, raise children communally. They study mathematics and philosophy for decades before governing. Their only goal is the city's good, having no private interests. It's simultaneously brilliant and terrifying. Brilliant because it addresses real problems in democracy: demagoguery, short-term thinking, incompetent leadership. Terrifying because it establishes totalitarian control over every aspect of life: education, reproduction, art, information, thought. Plato wants to abolish all poetry except hymns to the gods and praises of the good. Homer must be censored because he depicts gods behaving badly. Tragedy must be banned because it arouses inappropriate emotions. Music must be regulated because certain modes weaken character. The Republic is partly utopian vision, partly thought experiment, partly response to Athens' failure. If democracy produced the Peloponnesian War and executed Socrates, maybe democracy itself is the problem. Plato establishes the Academy around 387 BC, a school in Athens dedicated to philosophy, mathematics, and training potential philosopher kings. It lasts 900 years, the longest-lived educational institution in Western history. The Academy attracts brilliant students. Aristotle studies there for 20 years. The school develops mathematics, astronomy, political theory, metaphysics. It becomes the intellectual center of the Greek world. But the academy never produces actual philosopher kings. No city invites academy graduates to govern based on their wisdom. Plato himself tries to advise Dionysius II of Syracuse, hoping to create a philosopher king. The experiment fails miserably. Dionysius prefers tyranny to philosophy. This is Plato's tragedy. He develops a complete philosophical system explaining how society should organize. Reality ignores it completely. Cities continue operating through messy democratic or oligarchic politics. Philosophers remain marginal figures, admired perhaps, but politically irrelevant. Yet Plato's influence proves more enduring than any politician's. The dialogues establish philosophy as rigorous intellectual discipline. The theory of forms shapes metaphysics for millennia. The political philosophy influences everyone from medieval Christians to modern totalitarians. Most importantly, Plato preserves Socrates. Without Plato's writings, we wouldn't know about Socrates' method, his trial, his execution. The gadfly would be forgotten. Instead, Socrates becomes the archetype of the philosopher, someone who pursues truth regardless of consequences, who questions authority, who dies for principles. The irony is that democratic Athens, which executed Socrates, also made him possible. Only in a relatively free society can someone spend decades publicly questioning everything. Sparta would never tolerate a Socrates. Persian satraps would execute him immediately. Athens permitted philosophical inquiry even when it challenged core values, until it didn't, until fear and defeat made the democracy defensive, until association with traitors made questioning dangerous. The execution reveals democracy's fragility. Free speech works until crisis makes people afraid. Then the mechanisms that should protect dissent, juries, trials, public deliberation, get used to silence it. Socrates knew this risk. He questioned anyway. Plato spent his life explaining why Socrates was right and Athens was wrong. The city that produced both men, permitted both voices, then executed one and provided asylum for the other. That city represents classical Greece at its best and worst. The age of the polis is ending. The age of philosophy, born from its failures, is just beginning. Socrates questioned the polis. Plato designed its replacement. Neither changed how cities actually governed, but they changed how humans think about governance, justice, truth, and the examined life. That influence outlasts all the triremes, all the hoplites, all the empires. The marble crumbles, the ideas endure. Ironic location drives Antiochus out. Rome pursues into Asia. This is unprecedented. Roman armies have never campaigned in Asia before, but they're confident. The Battle of Magnesia in 190 BC confirms that confidence. Antiochus deploys the full Seleucid army, phalanx, cataphracts, elephants, chariots, perhaps 70,000 men. Rome and its ally Pergamon field maybe 50,000. Antiochus has numerical superiority. Better cavalry, the elephants. But the Roman commander, Lucius Cornelius Scipio, learns from his brother Scipio Africanus's victories over Hannibal. He knows how to handle elephants. Skirmishers target them, panic them. The elephants rampage through Seleucid lines. The cataphracts charge, but the terrain limits their effectiveness. Roman cavalry from Pergamon holds. The legions advance on the phalanx. Close combat. The gladius, short Roman sword, is deadly at close range. Phalanx units break when legionaries get past the pike points. The Seleucid army collapses, 50,000 casualties. The king flees. Rome imposes harsh terms. The Seleucid Empire is broken. Rome doesn't annex Syria. Not yet. But Antiochus is finished as a threat. For decades, Rome maintains this system. Client kingdoms. Free cities. Roman-aligned but not directly ruled. It's economical, doesn't require large garrisons. Local rulers maintain order. Rome intervenes only when necessary, but it's unstable. Dynastic disputes, rival claimants seeking Roman support. Rome is drawn into local conflicts repeatedly. Perseus of Macedon attempts to rebuild, violates peace terms. Rome responds. The Third Macedonian War, the Battle of Pydna in 168 BC, is the decisive engagement. The Macedonian phalanx advances. On level ground, it's still formidable. The Roman front line wavers. But the terrain is uneven. Small hills, gullies. The phalanx formation breaks up. Gaps appear. Roman maniples, small, flexible units, exploit the gaps. Pour through. Once inside, the legion's swords butcher the pikemen. Perseus is captured. The Antigonid dynasty ends. Macedonia is divided. Then, after rebellions, annexed entirely in 146 BC. The same year, Rome faces rebellion in Greece. The Achaean League resists Roman control. The Romans besiege Corinth. When it falls, the consul orders its destruction. The city is burned, buildings demolished, treasures looted and sent to Rome, survivors are enslaved. It's brutal, deliberate. A message to the Greek world. Resistance is futile. Rome rules now. Accept it or face annihilation. The destruction of Corinth shocks the Greek world. Corinth was ancient, wealthy, culturally significant. Its destruction is symbolic. The classical Greek world is finished. Rome is master now. Rome's conquest method is consistent. First, alliance. Protect clients. Intervene in local disputes. Gradually increase control. Then annexation. Turn the client into a province. Install Roman governors. Extract taxes. The process is gradual, but inevitable. By the mid-1st century BC, most of the eastern Mediterranean is under Roman control, either as provinces or as client kingdoms so dependent on Rome, they're effectively controlled. What makes Roman conquest successful? Multiple factors. Military superiority. The legion is more flexible than the phalanx, can operate in varied terrain, can adapt tactics mid-battle. Roman training and discipline are exceptional. Manpower. Rome draws soldiers from all Italy, plus allies, auxiliaries. They can sustain losses that would cripple Hellenistic kingdoms. Lose a battle, raise another army. The Hellenistic kingdoms can't match this capacity. Political cohesion. Rome is united. The Senate leads, magistrates command, internal disputes exist but don't fracture the state. The Hellenistic kingdoms suffer constant civil wars. Succession crises. Rome exploits these divisions. Strategic patience. Rome doesn't need quick victories, can wage long wars, outlast enemies. The Macedonian wars span decades. Rome persists, eventually wins. Diplomatic skill. Rome makes allies. Greek cities, rival kingdoms, uses diplomacy to isolate enemies, then crushes them militarily. It's a successful strategy repeated across the Mediterranean. Economic strength. Rome's Italian territories are productive. The tax base supports large armies. War plunder enriches the treasury. Victory funds more wars. It's a self-sustaining cycle. But there's a darker side. Roman conquest is brutal. Cities destroyed, populations enslaved, wealth extracted. The Greek world suffers. Economically, demographically, culturally. Yet paradoxically, Greek culture conquers Rome. Roman aristocrats admire Greek civilization, study Greek philosophy, commission Greek art. Greek becomes the language of educated Romans. Greek tutors educate Roman children. When Greece becomes a Roman province, Achaia, it's treated relatively well. Romans see themselves as heirs to Greek culture, protectors of Greek learning. They preserve what they conquer. The final Hellenistic kingdom to fall is Egypt. But that's a different story, wrapped up in Roman civil wars. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. Cleopatra and Mark Antony. The Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Octavian's victory, Egypt's annexation. By 30 BC, the Hellenistic age is definitively over. Rome controls the entire eastern Mediterranean. The kingdoms Alexander's successors built are gone, absorbed into Roman provinces, ruled by Roman governors. But the cultural legacy persists. Greek cities continue. Greek language remains dominant in the East. Greek philosophy thrives. The Roman Empire is politically Roman. But culturally, in the East, it's Greek. The legions defeated the phalanxes. But Greek culture conquered the legions. Greece as a Roman province, conquered, conquerors. Greece under Roman rule is a paradox. Politically subject, militarily defeated, yet culturally dominant. The conquerors become students, the defeated become teachers. After 146 BC, Greece is organized into the province of Achaia, not all of Greece initially. Macedon is a separate province. Athens, Sparta, and some other cities maintain nominal independence as free cities. But it's a fiction. Rome controls everything. The governor sits in Corinth, after Corinth's destruction in another city temporarily. Then Corinth is refounded as a Roman colony in 44 BC by Julius Caesar. Roman veterans are settled there. It becomes the provincial capital, a Roman city in a Greek land. Taxation is moderate compared to other provinces. Rome recognizes Greece's poverty. The wars have devastated the economy, cities depopulated, farmland abandoned. The great wealth of classical times is gone. Extract too much and there's nothing left. Instead, Rome values Greece culturally. Young Roman aristocrats tour Greece, Athens particularly. They study philosophy, rhetoric, history. It's considered essential education. Cicero studies in Athens, so does Brutus, Horace, Ovid, the list goes on. Athens becomes a university city. Philosophy schools continue. The academy, Plato's school, still operates, though changed since Plato's time. The Lyceum, the Stoa, Epicurean gardens. Roman students flock to these schools, learn from Greek masters. The philosophical schools are diverse now. Stoicism is particularly popular with Romans. Its emphasis on duty, self-control, accepting fate, these resonate with Roman values. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, writes his Meditations in Greek. Stoic philosophy, it's the Roman elite's spiritual foundation. But Greece isn't just Athens. The rest of the province struggles. Rural areas are depopulated, small farms abandoned. Large estates, latifundia, worked by slaves, replace them. This is a Roman economic model, efficient for owners, devastating for free farmers. Some Greek cities thrive under Roman rule. Corinth rebuilds, becomes prosperous again, trade routes through the isthmus, Patras grows. Thessalonica, technically in Macedonia, becomes a major commercial center. Others decline. Sparta is a tourist attraction. Romans visit to see the legendary city, but it's a shadow. The famous Spartan discipline is gone. The Aegoge is sometimes performed for tourists, living museum of a dead culture. Delphi continues. The oracle still functions, but its political influence is finished. No Greek cities seeking guidance for wars. Now Romans consult it, mostly out of curiosity or tradition. The priests give ambiguous answers. As always, the games continue. Olympic Games, Pythian Games, Isthmian Games, Nemean Games. Romans participate. Nero famously competes in 67 AD, wins every event he enters, because he's emperor. The judges know better than to declare him second. But the games maintain cultural significance. They're pan-Hellenic festivals, connect scattered Greek communities. Under Roman rule, Greeks cling to these traditions, markers of identity. Greek culture spreads under Roman rule too. The Eastern Mediterranean becomes more Hellenized, not less. Roman administration uses Greek. Greek city constitutions are imposed on Eastern cities. Greek urban planning, Greek education systems. Christianity emerges in this context. Jesus is executed in Judea under Roman rule. His followers spread his teachings. Paul of Tarsus, a Hellenized Jew, Roman citizen, writes letters to communities across the Eastern Mediterranean. In Greek, the language of culture. The New Testament is written in Koine Greek. Early Christian theology develops in Greek philosophical categories. The fusion of Jewish monotheism with Greek philosophical thought creates something new. This synthesis happens because Greek is the common language. Greek philosophy, the common framework. Rome's relationship with Greece is complex, military domination, but cultural submission. Roman generals loot Greek art. Statues are shipped to Rome. Libraries are confiscated. Paintings taken. Roman houses fill with Greek treasures, but it's not just looting, it's admiration. Romans commission copies of Greek sculptures. Greek artists work in Rome. Greek styles dominate Roman art. Roman temples copy Greek designs. The Pantheon in Rome uses Greek architectural principles. Roman literature imitates Greek forms. Latin literature develops by copying Greek models. Roman comedy is based on Greek New Comedy. Plautus and Terence adapt Greek plays. Roman epic follows Homeric patterns. Virgil's Aeneid is consciously Homeric, following in the great Greek tradition. Roman historians write in Greek sometimes, or use Greek methods. Polybius, a Greek historian, explains Rome's rise to a Greek audience. He's brought to Rome as a hostage, stays, becomes part of the intellectual circle of Scipio Africanus the Younger. His history justifies Roman rule, but also critiques it. It's complex, nuanced. Roman philosophy is Greek philosophy, translated, adapted, but fundamentally Greek. Lucretius writes Epicurean philosophy in Latin, but the ideas are Epicurus's. Seneca writes Stoic philosophy, but the school is Zeno's. Marcus Aurelius writes in Greek directly, doesn't bother translating. This cultural dominance frustrates some Romans. Cato the Elder famously distrusts Greek influence, sees it as corrupting, softening Roman virtue. He studies Greek anyway. Can't escape it. Even critics must engage with Greek culture. The Greek language remains dominant in the Eastern Empire. Roman administrators in the East must speak Greek. Inscriptions are in Greek. Official documents in Greek. Latin is used in the army, in some administrative contexts, but for everything else, Greek. This creates a bilingual elite. Western Empire uses Latin. Eastern Empire uses Greek. The division will eventually formalize. When the Roman Empire splits, the Byzantine Empire is Greek-speaking. Sees itself as Roman but uses Greek. Constantinople becomes the new cultural center. But that's centuries in the future. In the 1st century BC and AD, Greece under Roman rule is stable, poor, quiet, no longer a major political player, but culturally central, the source of civilization, the teacher of Rome. Pausanias, a Greek traveler in the 2nd century AD, tours Greece, writes a detailed guide. He describes monuments, tells myths, records local traditions. His account shows a Greece preserving its past, living in memory. Romans read his guide, visit the sites he describes. Greece becomes a museum, a place of pilgrimage for educated Romans. They visit to see where Plato taught, where Pericles spoke, where Marathon was fought. The past is more glorious than the present, but the past shapes Roman identity. This is the final paradox. Rome conquers Greece militarily, but Greece conquers Rome culturally. Roman civilization becomes Greco-Roman, inseparable. The fusion creates the classical tradition that dominates Western thought for 2,000 years. Greece as a Roman province is politically powerless, but its cultural power is immense. The conquered conquerors win in the end. The enduring legacy, the Greek blueprint. Walk into any Western courtroom. Look at the architecture. Columns, pediments, classical proportions. That's Greek. Enter a university. The word academy comes from Plato's Academy. Lyceum from Aristotle's Lyceum. The model of gathering to study, debate, question. That's Greek. Open a book on geometry, Euclidean geometry, named for Euclid. Proofs, axioms, logical structure, Greek methods from 300 BC. Still taught worldwide, the fingerprints are everywhere. Democracy, the word is Greek. Demos, people. Kratos, power. The idea that citizens should govern themselves. Debate, vote, hold leaders accountable. Athens invented this imperfectly, but the principle endures. Philosophy, the word itself is Greek. Philo, love. Sophia, wisdom, the systematic attempt to understand reality through reason. The Socratic method, asking questions, examining assumptions, testing beliefs. This approach shapes Western thought. Plato's theory of forms, the idea that material reality is imperfect reflection of perfect ideals. It influences theology, philosophy, science, how we think about truth and knowledge. Aristotle's logic, his system of deductive reasoning, syllogisms, his biological classifications, his ethics, his political theory. For 2,000 years, the philosopher meant Aristotle. Medieval universities taught his works as the foundation of knowledge. The Stoics provide ethical framework, duty, self-control, accept what you can't change, influence what you can. This philosophy shapes Roman thought. Christian ethics. Modern cognitive therapy echoes Stoic principles. Science and mathematics owe immense debts. The Greeks didn't invent science, but they invented the systematic study of nature using reason and observation. Thales predicting eclipses. Pythagoras exploring number relationships. Hippocrates separating medicine from magic. The Hippocratic Oath. Doctors still swear versions of it. First, do no harm. Medical ethics from 400 BC, Archimedes' mathematics, his methods anticipate calculus, his practical inventions, levers, pulleys, screws, are still used. His theoretical work on pi, on volumes and areas, remains foundational. Greek astronomy, Ptolemaic models dominated until Copernicus. Even when wrong, they were sophisticated. Mathematical, based on careful observation. The scientific approach, observe, theorize, test, is Greek. The arts carry Greek influence. Drama, the word is Greek. Tragedy and comedy as distinct genres. The three-act structure. Catharsis, emotional release through art. Theater as community experience, all Greek. Epic poetry. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey define the epic tradition. Virgil imitates Homer. Milton imitates Virgil. Joyce rewrites the Odyssey in modern Dublin, the hero's journey, the quest, the return home. These narrative patterns are Homeric, sculpture. Greek statues define ideals of human beauty. Contrapposto stance, weight on one leg, naturalistic anatomy. The Renaissance rediscovers Greek sculpture. Michelangelo studies it. Classical proportions become the standard. Architecture, the orders Doric, Ionic, Corinthian. Columns supporting pediments, proportions based on mathematical ratios. Government buildings worldwide copy Greek temple designs. The visual language of authority is Greek. Political theory draws constantly on Greek precedent. Plato's Republic, utopian thinking, philosopher kings, the idea that politics should be guided by wisdom, not just power. Aristotle's Politics, analyzing constitutions, classifying governments, understanding stability and change. Modern political science begins here. The Greeks invent historiography. Herodotus investigates, interviews sources, preserves multiple perspectives. Thucydides analyzes, seeks causes, distinguishes immediate from underlying factors. Historical method begins here. The Greek language itself shapes thought. Technical vocabulary in English comes largely from Greek. Democracy, telephone, photograph, microphone, biology, geology, technology. The word technology, technicraft, and logos, reason, is Greek. Scientific nomenclature uses Greek and Latin, mostly Greek. Biology, medicine, astronomy. The language of science is rooted in Greek. The alphabet. Our alphabet derives from Greek, which derived from Phoenician. The innovation vowels is Greek. Phoenician script was consonantal. Greeks added symbols for vowel sounds. This makes writing much more accessible, more precise. The Greek innovation spreads, Latin alphabet, Cyrillic, all ultimately from Greek development of Phoenician script. Christianity spreads using Greek. The New Testament is Greek. Early theology is Greek. Church councils debate in Greek. The merging of Greek philosophy and Jewish Christian theology creates Western religious thought. The concept of the soul as immortal, Platonic. The logos, the divine reason, as organizing principle, Stoic. These Greek ideas merge with Christianity, shape Christian theology. Augustine is Neoplatonic. Aquinas synthesizes Aristotle with Christian doctrine. Islamic civilization preserves Greek knowledge when Western Europe can't. Baghdad's House of Wisdom translates Greek texts. Arab scholars study Aristotle, Euclid, Ptolemy, add their own contributions. When these texts return to Europe in the 12th century, they spark the Renaissance. The Renaissance itself is deliberately Greek-inspired. Rebirth of classical learning. Humanists study Greek manuscripts, rediscover Plato, translate Homer properly. Greek teachers flee Constantinople when it falls in 1453. Bring manuscripts, knowledge. The Italian Renaissance explodes. The Enlightenment looks to Greece. Reason, logic, democratic ideals. The American founders study Greek history. Read Plutarch. Compare themselves to Athenians. The Roman Republic and Athenian democracy influence American constitutional design. The French Revolution invokes classical models. Revolutionaries see themselves as new Greeks. New Romans. Classical dress becomes fashionable. Neoclassical art. Architecture. The visual and conceptual language of revolution is classical. Modern Olympic Games, revived in 1896, deliberately evoking ancient Greece. International competition. Athletic excellence. The Olympic ideal, peaceful competition replacing war, echoes Greek values. Archaeology rediscovers ancient Greece. Schliemann excavates Troy. Mycenae, Evans excavates Knossos. The physical remains of Greek civilization are revealed. Museums fill with Greek art. Students study Greek history. Universities teach Greek. Latin, too. But Greek especially for aspiring scholars. Reading Homer in Greek is educational rite of passage. The language itself is considered formative. Modern democracy references Athens constantly. Direct democracy, representative democracy. The tension between them mirrors Greek debates, majority rule versus minority rights, demagoguery versus statesmanship. These are Athenian concerns, still relevant. The word tyranny is Greek. Tyrannos, ruler without legal basis. The Greeks distinguish tyranny from legitimate rule. This distinction shapes political thought. Ostracism, removing dangerous citizens by vote. The word comes from ostraka, pottery shards used for voting in Athens. The practice isn't used. But the concept, popular check on elite power, remains. Greek tragedy explores timeless themes: hubris, fate, justice, revenge, family obligation versus civic duty. Sophocles' Antigone, obey the state or follow conscience? Still relevant. Still performed. Still debated. The idea of the golden mean, moderation in all things, is Aristotelian. Virtue as the midpoint between extremes. It influences ethics. Psychology. Self-help literature echoes this ancient principle. The Socratic method, teaching through questioning, remains educational gold standard. Don't lecture. Ask questions. Guide students to discover truth themselves. It's difficult, time-consuming, but pedagogically powerful. The gymnasium. Physical education as part of holistic development. Healthy body supporting healthy mind. Modern physical education programs reflect Greek ideals. The agora, public space for commerce and debate. Modern urban planning rediscovers the importance of public gathering spaces. Plazas, parks, community centers. The Greek understanding that civilization requires places for people to meet, talk, argue. The symposium, gathering to drink and discuss ideas. Academic conferences are modern symposia, combining social interaction with intellectual exchange. The format is Greek. The concept of citizenship, polites, member of the polis, with rights and responsibilities, participation in governance. This idea shapes modern democracies. Who counts as a citizen? What do they owe? What are they owed? Greek questions, still debated. The ideal of kalokathia, beauty and goodness combined. Excellence of body and soul, character and achievement. This holistic ideal influences education theory. Character development alongside academic knowledge. Greek mythology remains culturally vital, stories everyone knows. Trojan War, Odysseus's journey, Hercules' labors, Oedipus's fate. These myths provide common reference points. Metaphors, psychological insights. Freud names complexes after Greek myths. Oedipus complex, Electra complex. Psychology uses Greek stories to describe human dynamics. The word narcissism, from Narcissus, who fell in love with his reflection. Achilles' heel, a fatal weakness, from Achilles' only vulnerable point. Pandora's box, releasing unforeseen consequences. Greek myths become everyday language. Western law incorporates Greek ideas. The jury system, citizens judging citizens, adversarial process, rhetoric to persuade. These are Athenian innovations. Roman law is more famous, but Greek practice influences it. The concept of natural law, laws higher than human statute, grounded in reason or divine order. The Stoics developed this. It influences Roman law, Christian theology, modern human rights thinking, the scientific method, hypothesize, test, revise. It's Greek in origin. The pre-Socratics sought natural explanations, rejected supernatural causes. This naturalistic approach is science's foundation. Critical thinking, questioning assumptions, demanding evidence, logical reasoning. These are Greek gifts. The Sophists taught rhetoric and critical analysis. Socrates questioned everything. This skeptical, analytical approach defines Western intellectual culture. The very idea of progress, that human effort can improve society, that reason can solve problems, this is partly Greek. Classical Greece saw cultural flowering, achievement, the belief that humans can shape their destiny through thought and action. Not everything Greek is admirable. Slavery, the oppression of women. Imperialism, brutality. The Greeks weren't moral paragons, but their intellectual achievements transcend their moral failures. The enduring legacy is this: the belief that reason can understand reality, that humans should govern themselves, that excellence is worth pursuing, that beauty and truth matter. These Greek ideas shape civilization. We live in a world Greeks made possible. Our democracies, our sciences, our arts, our ways of thinking, all bear Greek fingerprints. The philosophical questions we ask, the political systems we build, the knowledge we seek. Greek blueprints underlie them all. Ancient Greece ended 2,000 years ago, but it never really died. It transformed, spread, became foundational to Western civilization, and through Western influence to global civilization. When we debate in assemblies, when we prove theorems, when we perform plays, when we ask what is justice or what is truth, we're being Greek. Following paths they pioneered. That's the legacy. Not monuments, not conquests, ideas, methods, questions, ways of being human. These endure, they echo through millennia, they shape how we think, how we organize society, how we understand ourselves. The Greeks gave us the tools to build civilization. We're still using them.